your expectations for your China president?
What do you?
At what point are you done negotiating with Iran?
Well, we're going to see what happens. We're only making a good deal. We have their military is gone; it's wiped out, and we're only going to make a good deal. And we'll see what happens. But I believe that one way or the other, it's going to be very good for the American people, and I think actually very good for the Iranian people.
Are you reconsidering the Pakistanis as mediators?
No, they're great.
What?
I think they're great.
Mr.
I think
President.
the Pakistanis have been great. The Field Marshal and the Prime Minister of Pakistan have been absolutely great.
Mr. President, what is your message to President Xi as it relates to the Iran war?
Well, I think number one, we're going to have a long talk about it. I think he's been relatively good, to be honest with you. You look at the blockade, no problems. They get a lot of their oil from that area. We've had no problem, and he's been a friend of mine. He's been somebody that we get along with, and I think you're going to see that good things are going to happen. This is going to be a very exciting trip. A lot of good things are going to happen.
Mr. President, do you think he needs to intervene at all with the Iranians?
I don't
do you
think
think he can help in any way?
No, I don't think we need any help with Iran. We'll win it one way or the other. We'll win it peacefully or otherwise. Their Navy's gone, their Air Force is gone, every single element of their war machine is gone. They've killed a lot of people. They've killed 42,000 people at least over the last month and a half. We win.
Mr. President,
no matter how you cut it.
Mr. President, what do you think?
Do you believe, Mr. Kurdi, sir, Mr. President, do you believe your visit to China will impact of international economy and price of oil?
It's going to be a positive. We're going to have a very good meeting. I spoke with President Xi. We both look forward to the meeting. It's going to be great.
Mr. President,
Mark, Mr. President, what is going to be your red line to end the ceasefire for you? What will it take to pull the plug?
Well, we're going to see, and we'll be thinking about it on the flight, and we'll be thinking about it for the next little while. But we've beaten their militaries very soundly. That's over with. The blockade is very effective. It's been 100% effective. And one way or the other, it's going to work out very well. It's going to work out very well. I think you're going to have so much oil, you're going to have a gusher of oil like you've never had before. So when oil goes up a little bit, I thought it would go up much more. If you go back 3-4 months ago, when we were contemplating, we assumed oil would go much higher. Yesterday it was at $99. And if you think about it, I would have taken that all day long because it's very simple. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. They will not have a nuclear weapon. They know that. They've agreed to that. And then that's not what they said to me when it came to pay. We don't play games. They're not going to have a nuclear weapon.
Mr. President, you promised to bring inflation down. It's now at its highest level in 3 years. Are your policies not working? What's happening?
Policies are working incredibly. If you go back to just before the war, for the last 3 months, inflation was at 1.7%. Now, we had a choice. Let these lunatics have a nuclear weapon. If you want to do that, then you're a stupid person, and you happen to be. I mean, I know you very well. Anybody that wants them to have a nuclear weapon is a stupid person. So we said we're going to take the greatest stock market in history, and we're going to go down a little bit, and actually that turned out to be incorrect because our stock market is now at the highest point in history, which frankly surprised a lot of people. It's a very simple message. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and they won't have a nuclear weapon, and that's 100%. Their Navy is gone, their Air Force is gone, their anti-aircraft is gone, their radar is gone, their leaders are gone. They're all gone. Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. We're going to do whatever is necessary, and as soon as this war is over, which will not be long, you're going to see oil prices drop, and your stock market, which is already at the highest point in history, go through the roof. You're going to see the golden age of America, frankly, and you're seeing it now. So as soon as this is, don't forget, You have hundreds of ships that are loaded up with oil that want to come out. As soon as they come out, we're going to have a gusher of oil, and you're going to have inflation that goes way down. Now, with all of this, inflation is much lower than it was under Biden. Biden had the highest inflation in the history of our country. Inflation is nothing by comparison, but our inflation is just short term. Because if you go from just before the war, we were for the last 3 months 1.7%. And now what you have is as soon as this war is over, you're going to see inflation go down to probably 1.5%.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Mr. President, yesterday you said the Kurds arms for the Kurds for themselves. A U.S. military official said that the Kurds have not received any arms, and the Kurdish political parties are denying receiving any arms.
The officials are wrong.
Your message to Chinese people, sir, on the summit.
Delphi's doing a great job. The people of Venezuela are thrilled with what's happening. You can't even believe it. They're dancing in the streets. And as you know, we have Exxon, we have Chevron, we have all of the big companies going in. And Venezuela now is making more money than they made in the last 25 years.
And the political prisoners will come out.
As you know, they let a lot of the political prisoners out, and the rest will be Everybody wants that job. It's a very important job. Marty's a terrific guy, but he's going to go on and he's going to lead a good life. He was having some difficulty. You know, he's a great doctor, and he's having some difficulty, but he's going to go on and he's going to do well. Everybody wants that job.
You send a National Guard or ICE to voting locations in November.
You know what? I do anything necessary to make sure we have honest elections. We have to have honest elections.
So you're not doing that. Two quick questions, Mr. President. Japan is considered to be the month of Africa. On the May 25th, we'll be celebrating Africa Day. Would you mind doing something special, like 10 minutes interview to speak about your views on the Africa continent?
Fire is on life support. The person can bring it back alive.
Well, we'll see what happens. We're going to have a great meeting in China. He's a wonderful guy. He's a friend of mine, and we're going to have a great meeting. We do a lot of business with China. We do very well with China, and they do well with us. And the relationship is very good. We're going to have a great meeting.
Do you think he's got what it takes to convince the Iranians?
Whatever he can do to help with us. The war in Ukraine, I really think it's getting very close.
China invest $1 trillion in the U.S.? Will China invest $1 trillion in the U.S.?
When you're negotiating with Iran, Mr. President, to what extent are Americans' financial situations motivating you to make a deal?
Not even a little bit. The thing that matters when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I don't think about American financial situation. I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. We cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. That's all. That's the only thing that matters.
Mr. President, will China invest $1 trillion in the U.S. or NATO?
Dan?
What is more broken, NATO or OPEC?
Well, OPEC is having some difficulty right now because one of those things, but that has nothing to do with me. NATO was very disappointing to me. NATO was not there when we wanted them. We don't need NATO. We don't need NATO. But if we did need them, they just weren't there.
Can help and contribute to a deal with Iran?
Because, I mean, it might be. I don't think we need any help with Iran, to be honest with you. They're defeated militarily, and they'll either do the right thing or we'll finish the job. They're either going to do the right thing or we're just going to finish the job.
The message, sir, to the Chinese people as you embark on this summit.
That we're going to have a great relationship for many, many decades to come. My relationship with President Xi is a fantastic one. We've always gotten along, and we're doing very well with China. And working with China has been very good. So we look forward to it. As you know, President Xi will be coming here toward the end of the year, so that'll be exciting. I only wish we had the ballroom finished. The ballroom is right on budget and ahead of schedule, but I wish we had it finished now. You also may want to do one other thing. You may want to go see the reflecting pool, because that's under construction, and for the first time since 1922, it's going to work properly.
Sir, and the gas tax in Congress?
Got one of the great oil finds anywhere in the world, and you're not using it. They're not allowed to use it. And it's one of the best in the world, among the best oils in the world. Open up your oil in the North Sea and get tough on immigration.
Did he stay or go?
Europe is being very, very hurt by immigration. It's all over.
Did he stay or go?
That's up to him. But I told him from day one, you're getting killed on energy. You're windmilling your country to death. Open up the North Sea. You have one of the greatest sources of energy in the world. Open up the North Sea.
Should state governors drop taxes on oil? Would you ask them to do that?
I think it's a great idea.
Mr. President, may I ask you two questions? So, has there been any understanding between you and Putin that Russia should get entire Donbass?
No.
Mr. President, you have a standing invitation to travel to Russia. Do you think it might happen this year?
It could. I mean, I will do whatever is necessary. That war, I've settled 8 wars. That war is getting closer. Believe it or not, it's getting closer. And we think we're going to end up getting a settlement between Russia and Ukraine.
Mr. President, what is the ultimate goal of your trip to China?
I think more than anything else is we have massive relationships with China. We're the two superpowers. We're the strongest nation on earth in terms of military. China's considered second. Who knows? I mean, who knows? But we are. There's nobody even to come close. And you see that whether it's Venezuela or whether it's Iran. Iran's military is decimated. I have a great relationship with President Xi, and I think it's going to remain that way. But we have a lot of things to discuss. I wouldn't say Iran is one of them, to be honest with you, because we have Iran very much under control. We're either going to make a deal or they're going to be decimated. So one way or the other, we win.
What about
We're going to be talking about, with President Xi about a lot of different things. I would say more than anything else will be trade.
Did you say earlier that the only thing that matters to you when it comes to Iran is a nuclear weapon? You're not considering the financial impact of this war on Americans?
The the most important thing by far, including whether our stock market, which by the way is at an all-time high, but including whether or not our stock market goes up or down a little bit, the most important thing by far is Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon.
What about the President of Americans and crisis right now? How concerned are you about Americans, how they're feeling about what they're paying for food?
Are you listening to that? Every American understands, and they just had a poll, like 85%, which is surprising, it's only that. They understand that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. If Iran has a nuclear weapon, the whole world would be in trouble. Because they happen to be crazy, they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. Now, if the stock market goes up or down a little bit, the American people understand it. When it's over, you're going to have a massive drop in the price of oil, which a lot of people thought would be higher. I mean, it was $99 yesterday, which is low, which is relatively low. When this war is over, oil is going to drop, the stock market's going to go through the roof, and truly, I think we're in the golden age right now. You're going to see a golden age like we've never seen before. The minute it's announced, and I'll be the one to announce it because I'm the one that makes that decision, I could leave right now, and it would take them 25 years to rebuild their country. But I don't want to do that. I want to have it complete and total. Are you ready? As soon as this war is over, you're going to see numbers like you've never seen.
Stop the punches. Stop it.
I know how much value loyalty. Are you comfortable with people serving in the military if they personally oppose the Iran war for you?
I mean, I'm happy about it, but
But let's look at this.
I live with a lot of different
The voters who are confused about the changing maps, the changing dates, and the African Americans concerned that this is going to draw black members of Congress off the map. What do you say?
Well, I think it's been a wonderful process. They've been, the Democrats, or as I call the Democrats, because they are dumb in so many ways, they've redistricted for years, and now we took our shot, and it looks like we're going to pick up a lot of seats, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. We want voters to have their choice. We want fair voting. We want fair elections. The Democrats have been cheating on elections for many years, and all we're doing is winning. Thank you.
Where he met with President Trump and addressed Congress. This was a last-ditch attempt by the fading empire spawned by the City of London to maintain relevance. That's what we're going to talk about in this video. Hey, Vivify Mariposa, thank you so much for making yourself available.
Hi, Rich. Thank you for having me here.
And you take a similar point of view to those Promethean people.
Yes.
Which is that Donald Trump is out to destroy the British Empire, and the
Yes.
British Empire, spawned out of the City of London, is fading, and King Charles's visit is an indication of that? Is that so?
Yes.
How so?
Because we celebrated 250 years that we supposedly move on from the City of London. And King Charles coming, it was just like when he handed the bell to President Trump, it was just here, this is your ring, and you're the king now, even though he's not the king. But he actually told, we lost control of you because all the decision and power movement that President Trump is doing now. And you follow all the speech that he did, that he spoke about his mother and the visit that she did, and he spoke to the Congress. He was trying to bring nostalgia to the American and to make Trump to like forget what he's doing. But if you follow all the action that President Trump did during that week, you see that it was like, no, we're not doing that. And then you saw the post that he posted, Mr. Nice, there's no more Mr. Nice Guy, that he posted after that speech. and many saw it as Iran, but I also saw it as a King Charles. That was my position.
Okay. Now, I did a video with Joachim and EM where we decoded the visit. And just to go over some of those things so I get your perspective on it. So one was the US soldiers, the Guard, wearing
Yes.
revolutionary uniforms. That's quite something.
That was a slap in the face for me. That was the slap in the face. That was telling you, okay, we are in control. This is you coming and accepting that you're failure. You have no more control over the American banking system and everything that you've been having for so long.
Yeah.
Because we fought the war in 250 years ago, but he's still having control of us. And he's dismantling slowly. Like it's like a domino effect. And people are, because the media is not covering all together, people are not looking at it. And that's what he's doing. He's dismantling, and then like in the video that you did with Joaquin and Ian, the Guard, the Beehive, that was a big thing. That
Okay,
was
we'll come to the Beehive in a second, right? And the Union Jack, and there may be others that you've seen, right? But the Revolutionary Guard, I'm thinking if I was president of the United States and I wanted to be friendly with a visiting dignitary, I wouldn't do something that says, I'm independent of you. That's not a warm, friendly overture. I mean, they could have done something with a modern ceremonial uniform.
Yes.
They could have done that, right? Or something about our shared culture, like Elvis or I don't know, right? But you know what I mean? Something shared like this, something that's warm.
He was trying to say, we're moving on from you.
Yeah,
That's
we're
the whole-
independent. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
very
what the
clear.
whole, and you see, like when he went to the UK, and he was walking in front of the king,
Of the Queen.
next to the guards,
Yeah.
and he just right there, he's sitting. No, you following me? I'm not following you. And I don't know if people remember that.
Yeah.
So since then, he's been doing that, and people are like, oh, he's been friends to the guard. No, he left the king behind, and the king was walking behind him.
Yeah.
So that from there, you've been seeing what Trump has been doing, and people like looking at him like he's a clown, but he's moving like he's playing chess.
Yes. Okay.
He's playing chess.
Well, Tom Longo says he's actually playing poker. That's an American game, right? He's playing Texas
today
Texas
he
Hold'em.
posted, I have all the wild cards. I don't know if you saw that.
Right, with the Uno, right? But he's
He
playing.
has all the wild cards. So yes, he played all of them, and he's playing so well. And people are not looking. Like you have to see a design. I mean, like my articles, I follow behavior. When you follow behavior and action, you understand what's going on, but you don't follow narrative. Narrative, they can tell you this, and the actions do something else. And you follow narrative and patterns and behavior is two different things.
Yeah.
And his behavior is consistent. President Trump's behavior is consistent. He can make a big show for the media. And the media says, oh, they mistakenly had this. Oh, how embarrassing was this? It was not embarrassed at all. He signaled. King Charles saw it. We saw it. They tried to cover it up.
Yes, and then the Union Jack was upside.
The flag was before. If that people missed that part.
Which was that? Which was that?
The Australian flag. It was
The Australian
before,
flag.
Yeah, it was before the England flag, and it was the position was always higher. So it was different things that they people didn't see. You the UK flag first, not the Australian one, because who was visiting?
Right. Okay, so he had.
So they did that in the cemetery, Arlington Park, and everything. And I was looking to all the signs. I was like, "What's wrong with this picture?" And I said, "This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong." And I was like, he did so many things that he was like, "Nah, that's not a mistake. Too many. One, okay, too many is It's a signal. It's
Right.
behavior.
Okay. And then the bees. What is it about the
beehive.
bees?
The beehive. The new queen, Melania. She's the new queen.
And then he tweeted out 2 kings.
Yeah, that he was trolling. That's trolling.
But where were the no kings protests from the Democrats about a king visiting? He was a real life king.
And what he did, he said, "Oh, he did something that I couldn't do. He made the Democrats stand up. He embarrassed them right there. He embarrassed the Democrat right there. He's like, okay, so you do it for a foreign and you don't do it for us. So right there, and you see the Democrats is falling down slowly, and they desperate. They are so desperate, and desperation is not good.
No. No, well,
Desperation is not good.
but they don't have any policies. They don't have any solutions.
No, they don't have, because Trump took all of them.
Yeah.
He took the book, and he's doing one by another one and another one, and they don't have anything to come up with. So what the last thing they did, they went to Cuba. Senators are going to Cuba.
Oh, Democratic senators are going to Cuba.
Yes,
Why?
to talk to the regime, to save them.
To save
So-
the regime. Okay.
So how desperate you have to be that you have to go to another country. You can't, like, Venezuela is out. You cannot go to Iran. I said Cuba was next. He's doing Cuba next. And what the Democrats are doing? Cuba. So city of London is falling completely. And remember, those are the ones who pay the lobbyists to control the politicians that are here to create division and chaos. All this chaos that we're having in the U.S. because of the narrative. And who support that narrative? For the Democrat, the city of London.
Okay. And something else Trump said a few days ago. I too.
He said so many things. So I have to
Well, here's one thing about Trump, right? And you know, if you've got TDS and you don't get this, you're missing out. Trump is really funny. He's really, and I don't mean he's
an orange clown.
No, there's that, like, that's people being pejorative about him, right? But
Oh, yes.
he's actually genuinely funny. Was it he visited a school, and he said, you know, he said to the kids, apparently, "Oh, here's my signature. You can sell it for $25,000." Biden, you couldn't do that. He had this auto pen. He's funny.
He makes, and people get mad at that because he's able to make fun of everything, and he, even the things that happened when the Tata assassinated, he's like, and he mentioned, and I was like, oh, that's my article right there. All the assassination that is happening because you're doing something right.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's my article that I
with
wrote.
Donald Trump in power. So they're doing everything they can to regain power and win the midterms. And their project, the House of Lords have declared that the special relationship between the UK and the United States is over. They've said they don't think they're going to survive a second term with Donald Trump in power. So they're doing everything they can to regain power and win the midterms. And their project is failing. That's what we're going to talk about in this video. Make sure you listen all the way through to the end, because we are joined by Alex Craner. Hey, Tom. Hey, Susan. Thank you so much for making yourself available. Susan, the House of Lords.
Yeah, well, it's useful to keep your eye on them because I think they assume nobody pays attention to what they're writing, and we do, because it is the report that just came out from the Defense and International Affairs Committee. It's a biannual report on U.S.-UK relations, and it is pretty sober in terms of the fact that the model they've operated on for probably more than 100 years, although they tend to talk about it in the post-war period, has been, as Mark Carney said, by Donald Trump. And what you read between, they said this in 2018 in their report, and this is sort of the import. If you listen to the Chatham House panel, which released this a couple of weeks ago, they're all saying, oh, if Trump stays in there for another 2 years, we're not going to be able to reverse this. We're not going to be able to get back on top. So obviously their preferred option is to get rid of Donald Trump so that he doesn't serve in another 2 years. And that has been their midterm strategy. People operate off of the conventional wisdom. The party in power always loses the midterms. I think there's only 2 or 3 times in the past 40 years or so when that hasn't been the case. But, what people need to realize is this is not a conventional midterm, and Donald Trump is by no means a conventional leader. So, because what he's strategic revolution, which is why this special relationship is essentially, an artifact of the past. But he's carrying out an economic revolution, the foundation of which, in my thinking, is tariffs. That is the most fundamental question, because it says we assert our economic sovereignty. We are no longer ourselves at the international markets, international trade flows, international insurance flows, international shipping lanes, and the people who set the prices and control the money. We're going to build the stuff here in the United States. Not 100%, but the essence of what we actually need. That is a declaration of economic independence, and they are doing it. And especially if you see this lock in for the next 2 years, we're just beginning to see the initial impact of the construction that started last year. A lot of construction of energy plants. Here's a fun fact. The amount of power plant construction in the United States has increased during this current Trump term, 68%. Yeah, 68%. Construction, a lot of it you're seeing in the domain of construction, i.e. the plants aren't finished, so they're not hiring the manufacturing workers yet, they're hiring the construction workers while these things spin up. But you see it when you think through a process sheet of how you run an economy, of what it physically takes to rebuild your manufacturing. You look at things like construction, warehouse construction, transportation, all of these kinds of things, and there's stuff going on there, big stuff. Now that's going to accelerate if Trump can continue over the course of the next 2 years, get through the midterms relatively intact. So that's their pain point. Their point is the midterms. They want to try and bring this to a screeching halt by taking the House and the Senate, or at least one of those institutions. Obviously, taking both of them would be, although, I actually thought this through the other day. I kind of reminded myself, what if they impeach and convict Donald Trump? But that doesn't work out, they don't have all sorts of, and we just saw another assassination attempt. So, and which is, this question of whether it goes kinetic in that particular respect. But that's the problem that they have. And when you look at what just happened in Indiana in this primary election, where President Trump basically said, the Indiana State Senate refused to do redistricting. I am going to primary every Republican who refused to go along with me. And he wiped him out. Wow. The vote margins were unbelievable. These weren't squeakers. These were double digits across the board, and sometimes 20%, 30%. And he wiped out people who had been in office for decades and decades and decades. So, this story that the Trump revolution is foundering on the rocks of whatever, Candace Owens delusions or whatever, that is not what you're seeing in terms of these votes. Now, that is a Republican primary. That is not a general election where you're still dealing with TDS. You're still dealing with a lot of people in the electorate who may not have TDS, but they're still trapped in the world of perception and they're not looking at what's really going on. But I think what you're going to start to see from this administration is, I think you're going to see more and more of what happened on Monday when Brooke Rollins, the Ag Secretary, Acting AG Todd Blanche, and Peter Navarro held an amazing press conference where they announced how they are moving the president's executive order to go after the meatpacking cartels.
Yeah.
4 meatpacking cartels control 86% of our meatpacking, which means they have the cattle ranchers by the balls and they have the American consumer by the balls. And this administration is going after them for antitrust violations. They've got a very robust whistleblower program where you can take 20% of the profits of a fine if you blow the whistle on these cartels. And they gave one example, where a cartel said, oh, it had to shut down because there was an electrical fire. No, it was just market rigging, right. and they use one single agrostat firm so that they can coordinate the prices and so on. But they're going after these guys. They're going after them big time. And they're making the point that 2 of these, JBS and National Beef, are Brazilian companies. It's interesting who was just in the White House, Lula,
and
for a private
also,
meeting with the president.
Yeah, who refused to do the press conference afterwards because he probably got his because he probably couldn't sit down.
Yeah, right, exactly. But
Trump got done with it.
This was a really, I often say to my friends in the MAGA movement, spend less time doom scrolling and spend more time watching what this administration is actually. You should watch this. Because when they describe this consolidation of the cartels and what they have done, this is a midterm issue. The fact that ground beef is a luxury item in the United States right now, there's a midterm issue. Whose fault is that? Is that Donald Trump's? No, it's this system. It's a system of cartelization, of monopoly. This is the classic British imperial system, and they're going after it. And that's just one example. So I think you're going to see more and more of that where the rubber really meets the road, because there are pain points out there for people. Obviously, the gas prices, but I think that's going to resolve, assuming we see this thing through fairly quickly, which I think we will. But gas prices, food prices, healthcare prices, Trump is moving as hard as he can in terms of this Trump RX and pharmaceuticals and most favored nation. When you look across the board, what he's doing, which again, it gets to this question of the difference between perception and reality. The Democrats live in the world of perception, and half of the Republican Party does. And what Trump is saying is, well, in order to actually bring prices down, you have to do shit. You actually have to change things. So they're moving on food. They're moving on healthcare. They're moving energy massively in terms of energy production. Whole layers of the economy they're actually moving on. And I think you're going to start to see fairly soon a very big offensive from this administration on these questions, on these questions that they're carrying out.
As we run into the midterms as part of their
of course.
Tom?
This is the funny part about it, is that the quote unquote true MAGA folks, the Steve Bannon crowd, on all of those people, like when you listen to them talk, it was like Trump wasn't moving fast enough on January 21st of last year. Like, he's inaugurated on January 20th. On January 21st, all these people were like, "Oh my God, it's been 24 hours. Why hasn't there been an arrest yet? Why haven't we, why haven't we fixed the country?" Okay, so again, perception versus reality, and they just keep saying it over and over and over again, and that's just big lie technique stuff. That's just pure propaganda, pure intelligence, narrative shaping, and all the rest of it. When obviously we get into, and they've been pounding that point for over a year in order to get to this point in the midterms where they would then be able to say, see and so this is what in the video we did previously, I was talking about perception, options change, and how everything changes, perception changes all at once, right? The value of a particular gambit, they stay on target, they stay on point, they stay on point, they stay on point. Then they get a data point that says, oh, by the way, it didn't work. Then they change and they flip. So you're going to immediately start to see the Democrats become worried about all these things because they realize that what wasn't working, well, they tried this, it didn't work. That marketing campaign is over. Now we're going to move to another one, right? And it comes down to there are certain dates and times when when all of the the perception and management of perception fails. You know, Jim Sinclair used to call it MOPE, management of perspective economics. I've called it MOP, management of perspective politics. It doesn't matter what it is. We use the same mechanisms over and over and over again in order to tell you a story, and then hope that you stay within the confines of that story to then, and never, ever, ever, you know, look away from it. But then when you get data that says otherwise, like everybody, oh my God, no one saw this coming. Like, really? Like, really, we didn't see this coming. Like, everybody was surprised that Donald Trump attacked Iran, knowing full well that for 40 years, Trump's been saying Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, and I will bomb them back to the Stone Age to keep them from doing so. I mean, you know, so like, but not the other. No, that's not true. He's a madman. It doesn't matter. So when you look at the beginnings of the primary season that we've already seen so far, it's pretty obvious that there ain't no air between Donald Trump and most of the base. Now, the question is, what has this management of perspective politics, what's been the real target? Well, the real target is the squishy anti-war crowd and the squishy, you know, passivism at all costs, as I think is a phrase you coined, Susan, libertarianism, which is nonsense. And if you didn't coin it, somebody else did. I know I didn't coin it.
Might have been Barbara.
But it might have been Barbara. Might have been Dexter White. I mean,
yeah, right.
It could have been easily, but all I know is I watch certain, you know, but the passivism at all costs doesn't work, right? It's not real politics. The Americans understand that in order to move forward in this life, we're going to have to, you know, fight for what it is that we believe in, and the messaging from the halal right, from Tucker Carlson all the way down, has been pacifism at all costs. Now, again, no one likes war, no one likes anybody dying, but at the end of the day, you know, when people choose to threaten you with blah, then, you know, with extinction, well, then you have to take them at their word and move forward, and then punch them in the mouth and see otherwise. So, okay, so we're into that. So this is what politics is. And at the end of the day, where the rubber meets the road is the elections. And Ken Paxton is going to get rid of John Cornyn, most likely. Big Senate primary. We get a seat, and functionally we get a +1 in the Senate that we didn't have before.
Right, because he'd actually be a Trumper.
Because he'd actually be somebody that was, you know, on board with something close to what Donald Trump is trying to do. You know, even if Ken Paxton's not perfect, he's certainly better than John Cornyn, right? And, you know, I know that a lot of people are, you know, it was funny. I mentioned the other day, I think it was Peter St. Onge did a great video about how many people we've thrown off the SNAP rolls, right? Like 4.3 million people. Like Trump came out the other day and said, okay, everybody has to reapply. Everybody on SNAP, you have to reapply. All you have to do is go through reapplyment, just the reapplication process. Just prove to me that you're still, give me proof of life, and, you know, and prove and you know, prove that you deserve the benefit, and you'll get it. We got rid of 4.3 million people. Okay. Same thing's happening with Social Security. You know, I've been saying this for 18 months now. Like, just have everybody send a Social Security Administration a, you know, proof of life email. So, you know, grandma who's 127 years old, so getting her $1,200 check. Oh, sorry, she's not alive. Okay, we're cutting it off. Right. So, you know, you're going to be able to run on this stuff. Like, when you get into the actual midterms, right? This whole concept that the midterms, that these people started, like the midterm positioning in 2025, is moronic. It's nonsensical. It's ahistorical, and it's retarded. Because most people don't give a shit about the midterms until about July.
Yeah, if then.
If then, exactly. July, maybe. And that's really the House reps who have to go home and start campaigning. They're the ones who start the process. They're the ones who, like, you know, go home and they have to, like, spend a month going, okay, so what are we going to run on? What's our campaign going to be? And then they start campaigning in August. And that's the reality that's actual reality, down and dirty, practical politics, people on the ground doing the thing, raising money and all the rest of it. Or the money raising is already happening. So let's talk about money raising for a second. Brought it up. Are the Republicans not out raising the Democrats by about 10 to 1?
At the national level.
At the national level?
Yeah.
The Democrats aren't raising any money. And we cut off a lot of their grift money. The NGO money, the money laundering money, the Somali leering centers and all that stuff. That stuff's all being cut off. Trump is sending out bills to people who've been engaged in COVID loan fraud and SNAP fraud and this fraud. They send out bills, to people like for $1.8 million. Like, you owe us this money. You've stolen this from the government. We want it back. Like, the only time you ever get a bill from the government, that you're not supposed to get is when something like this from the IRS, and it's only when you're middle class and white.
Yeah, right.
Because they only go after the people who can actually pay.
All right, there's that.
So let's not kid ourselves. Like, this is a functional, as Susan was saying, is a functional mechanistic change to the way government operates, and they're going to be able, and all these guys are going to be able to run. And so,
anything that you'd like to advise us that you'd like to see to achieve that objective?
Well, thanks to you and the leadership in Tennessee, we just opened up our new office in Memphis to permanently assure the citizens of Tennessee that we're not going anywhere. And the budget request enhancements that we've put in place will allow us to hire the agents that we need to fill those billets across the country.
Yeah, that's a nice reversal from previous policy. Thank you. And thanks for all of the effort. Director Serold, I'd like to turn to you. Certainly things didn't stop with the FBI's crime task force. That effort laid the groundwork for the president to issue an executive order establishing Memphis Safe. Director, given your direct involvement, can you walk me through the results of Memphis Safe task force from your perspective and where you see it going from here?
Thank you, Senator. Thanks to your support and that of your colleagues.
The primaries now will tell you who's actually going to be running. Let's look at what happened the other night in the Republican primary. So you think that the podcast bros, the Fox News podcast bros, again, the halal right, the Tucker Carlsons, Nick Fuentes, and all these people who came out and they were all like, they're all, pissing and moaning about Trump's not doing X, Y, and Z. We're gonna back all these challenges to the guys that Trump has backed. And what happened in Ohio? Of all people, H-1B Obama himself, Vivek Ramaswamy, one of the guy who crushed still took 85% against Casey. Whether Butch is a good guy or a bad guy, doesn't matter. Trump backed him, and he won 85-15. Now, and then he's going to be in a fight against a literal CIA asset on the other side. Like, Vivek's going to win the governorship in Ohio. I don't think it's going to even be that hard. He should win 55-45 with no problem, because Ohio's not purple anymore more than Florida was ever purple. Okay? The people in Ohio are not going to vote for the status quo. I've been to Southern Ohio. My wife's family is from Southern Ohio. It's literally where they came up with the idea of The Walking Dead. Okay? It's literally zombie land. It's nothing but fentanyl and, people dying from having worked at the atomic plant and all of it. It's awful. Between that and the corn farmers who can only make money, who can only balance the books by growing pot in the middle of the fields, and now the Amish are taking and gentrifying the place by taking the whole area over. If it wasn't for that, so you think any of those people are voting Democrat because Donald Trump started a war in Iran? Really? Okay, and we're about to fight on my ass. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, this is reality. So Vivek's going to win in Ohio, and he'll have coattails. Okay? Because Trump is doing enough, more than enough, to change the dynamic and most people can see it.
Yeah.
And now let's talk about redistricting. I'm going to throw it right back over to Susan. Before we do that, an important one.
Before we do that, that's really quite something. And I notice my perception that is that Trump was going to do badly in the midterm. So these results come out as a surprise to me. You know, and why I'm saying this, Tom, is like there's all the nonsense in the mainstream media which gets filtered out and infects independent media commentary at that space. And then you talk about people like Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson and I don't know so much Nick Fuentes, right? But, you know, I've been listening to them for years. My friends and family have been listening to them for years. And then they think, yeah, they're really great. They're really great because they oppose Israel and they oppose war. And then, or now they're opposing Trump and then they get carried along with it.
Right. Well, what's interesting, Rich, I'll turn it over in just a second, Susan, to finish the thought. But the point about Vivek and the point about Casey Putsch and the point about all of these guys that came up and they thought that having a lot of cachet in the internet world translates into cachet in the real world. They don't. They keep losing over and over and over again. They keep people don't, because most people aren't on Twitter. It's not real life. It's not a real strategy. Okay. And, you know, that's just the reality of the situation. And
I'll give you an actual anecdote directly. My husband's running for state rep. We lived south of Detroit in a heavily blue collar district, classic working class district, has always been Democratic, but voted for Trump in 2024, at least our town, not the whole district. Voted for Trump in 2024, voted for him in 2016. So they're the kind of key bellwether. He ran last time. So he's done a lot of door knocking. He went out door knocking last week for the first time since the temperature has changed a little bit. And he came back and he said, I was really surprised. People were calm. He said they weren't politically tense like they were in 2024. And he was hitting a mix of people, you know, it was hard R's and independents and a few Democrats who didn't agree with him. But, you know, but he said nobody was freaked out about the gas prices. They all knew it was going to come down. One person, before I could even say something, he said, I know it's not Trump's fault. He said, he was just, and then he's gone out a couple of times since then. And it's holding. It's the same thing where if you're living, you know, in the you know, social media world, everybody's hair is on fire about everything.
Right.
And here were, you know, mostly they wanted to talk about the, you know, how they were trying to get through life. You know, one was going to college and was just talking about that. And they were just talking about their day to day. And I was talking about the changes that Trump is bringing about, you know, in terms of reconfiguring the economy, because here all you have to do is remind people what life was 40 years ago before NAFTA, right? Where one income could comfortably raise a family in a middle class standard of living with stability and all of that. And that all has been taken away. And that's why when you focus on the economy, and that's, you know, that's, people get tired of me saying this, but, you know, in my political incarnation, I'm out there constantly saying it is the economy, stupid. That's what you have to talk about. Do not let the Democrats hijack this with hot button issues. You know, a lot of people still want to go out and campaign on boys and girls bathrooms and, you know, women's sport. And so we pretty much won that fight at the national level. I mean, not that you don't want to make clear, you know, you think it's psychotic and it, you know, shouldn't be allowed, but that's not what's going to move the needle. At this point, what's going to move the needle is when people begin to say, wait a minute, we could get a country back where I could actually live and where I can have some confidence that my kids live. I mean, we've all used this statistic. The average age for the first-time home buyer in the United States right now is 40 years old. You could be a grandmother before you own your first house. You know, so, and people know that's wrong. People know that you've got to be able to get a starter house when you're 26 years old. So if you actually want to start to raise a family, you don't have to do it in a closet. And, you know, so, but I keep using the word Stockholm syndrome. We got to break people out of their Stockholm syndrome where they think the way we've been living under globalism is normal. And all you can do is be mad about it. Or, you know, as Scott Bessent has said, the Democratic strategy is compensate the loser. You know, so throw some money at somebody so they don't starve, but you're still trapped. in the equivalent of a plantation as, as a mental slave. But to begin to give people this sense, that this is a revolution in what they are doing. I think they're going to be campaigning on it more and more. I want to bring up one other little revolutionary aspect to this, because I think it's absolutely stunning. Everybody who's, in our world wants to know, when are you going to get rid of the Federal Reserve? Well, of course, we'd all like to get rid of it tomorrow, but it's not that simple. You're going to need to have some kind of institution to replace it. But look at what this administration is doing. They're setting up little mini national banks all over the place, in the sense that they'll find a facility in the Energy Department, which can then issue credit to people who want to build transmission facilities or a new power plant or so on. They've got dedicated credit for nuclear power. They just set up the vault for strategic minerals processing here in the United States with dedicated lines of credit. If somebody wants to start to actually process strategic materials here in the United States. As a result of some of these things, we have the first new aluminum smelting facility being built in the United States in 50 years. And we have the first graphene, I think it was graphene, not graphite, mine and processing facility being built in the United States in 70 years. You're talking 3 generations that we've been going downhill, right? And then my favorite is Hegseth testified in Congress a couple of weeks ago, and all the fireworks were about Iran and how big the budget is and so on. Anybody who read his testimony and was paying attention would have noticed they've set up, the Defense Department now has an Office of Strategic Capital. They have their own little bank in the Pentagon now, credit generating facility, to make sure that if they issue a contract to somebody who is ready to build something that we need, they don't have to go to JP Morgan Chase to try and, beg for a loan. The credit will come directly from this new facility. There's probably a half a dozen of those facilities now sprinkled through. You need to actually build things and provide credit to do that. And that provides the jobs where you can go back to a world where one income can raise a family.
And this is part of the reason why, when you look at the final, the final text of the yield, stablecoin yield issues that they finally resolved in the Clarity Act, why the banks were fighting so hard against. This is an interesting little tidbit. We bring up JP Morgan. And I'm not actually here to praise or damn them at this point, because I think they understand that this needs to change. I'll give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. When you look at the final text on the Clarity Act, what the banks were against was passive holders of stable coins getting the yield on the Treasury bond, the T-bill that backs that stable coin. So you put $500 in the bank turns around and can issue $500 worth of stable coins based on that. And then those stable coins have to be backed by short-term treasuries, right? 30-day, 60-day, 90-day treasuries, 1-for-1. The banks were saying, look, you can't just passively give them yield. That's the equivalent of passbook savings. That's actually the problem. It's not savings at that point, it's a checking account. Like, checking accounts are 0-time withholding. Their money it's instantly accessed. Checking deposits, fundamental difference between checking and savings, right? A checking deposit has 0-time holdback. You put your money in a checking account, once it clears, you can move it tomorrow. You move it immediately, 5 seconds later. Interest is what you get paid for foregoing the use of your money for a certain amount of time. You're not supposed to get money for 0-time deposits, right? That's the difference between M1 and M2, right? So what you're getting at here is that the banks were actually arguing against stablecoins generating passive yield by holders not having any holdback on their time holdback on their money. Why? Oh, God, sorry about that. Hold on for a second. Am I still there, or can you still hear me?
Yeah, you're here.
Okay. Phone call comes in, screws up the iPad. So the banks were arguing against that, and of course that ran through the zeitgeist, the financial press, as the banks want the farm to yield for themselves. That T-bill represents. No. What we wound up with is that they didn't want that but you can, if you decide to stake those stable coins, like traditional now DeFi staking, where you put your money aside for 90 days and you're going to get paid. That's okay. Bonus points, cashback points, the thing like the rewards programs that we have on credit cards, that's perfectly fine. Not passive yield on effectively passbook savings, which I've always complained about as a hard Austrian. I'm like, no, this shouldn't be that way. If you want to get interest, you need to forego the use of your money in some way for a certain amount of time, so that we're not counterfeiting. We're not creating a coin and then immediately paying interest on it, and that's just inflation. Right. So the banks, interestingly enough, it was the banks that were saying no to the old system in effect. So what I'm getting at is that the banks even want to be out of this casino of investment, having to make money on investment banking and all the rest of it. They want out. They want to get back to 363 banking because they can see the future. Because aside from that, you also have what Susan just brought in, which is the competition from other terms of credit generation coming directly from the Treasury. So it's no longer a Federal Reserve has the monopoly on new issuance of new monetary units. The commercial banks sit in the middle and they make all the money. And then we get too high a cost of capital on the other end. And all the money rolls back up to the Federal Reserve, to the banks, and to the financial class. And then private equity gets to come in when the business goes bust or when the business is good and destroy the company and all the shit that we've lived with, right? That system is not going to be part of clarity. And the banks are in effect saying, we're on board with what Trump is doing. Now, that makes sense if you subscribe to my analysis of the last 5 or 6 years, where they went out, or 8 years, where they were the ones who pushed to get us off of LIBOR and onto SOFR. And then they did that during Trump's first term when they saw the opportunity for that. And then, of course, we have centralized clearing of treasuries. That happened under Jay Powell. There's all these things that have happened now that have put the banking class in the banking sector within the framework of what Trump is trying to accomplish. And by doing that, we're not in an adversarial position anymore. We're actually shutting off all the hot money flows in that respect. Money can come into the United States, but it has to be invested in order to get out of the United States. Okay. And that's fine.
And Tom, talking about not being in an adversarial position, we've just been joined by Mr. Alex Craner.
Hey, Alex.
Hi, Susan. Hi, Tom.
Good to see you.
I thought I'd be fashionably late today.
Super fashionably late. So, Alex, we'll just hit the ground running. So, what do you think of the show so far, Alex?
Great.
Oh, Alex, you're so funny. You're so funny. So we've been having this conversation.
You forgot to ask. You forgot to ask me. What do I think? What about what?
Yeah. What do you think about what?
Yeah, I think it's awesome.
Well, I know what you think about the British and the Russians, because you've said a lot of it recently.
Oh yeah. Did you see? Oh my God. Is this record? This is recorded, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Like, okay, I have to understand the mystery of why 10 European nations would agree to put their navies under British command when the obvious objective is to antagonize Russia and to provoke a war. Like, how does that happen? We need to understand that.
They still want to believe that they control all the maritime choke points, and of course they want to control the North Sea, right? We're talking about the North. I talked about this last weekend. We're talking about the Scandinavian countries and everybody in that area.
Yeah, the joint expedition force.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's they want to control that. They can't control the choke points around Greenland anymore. Then they want to control everything from the English Channel back and bottle Russia up, because they're going to lose access to the Bosporus and the Dardanelles after we blow up Turkey's army.
Yeah, right. Okay. But how
I'm thinking
do
ahead here.
10 naval chiefs sign up to put their navies under British command? I mean, these are countries. It's like Norway and Sweden and Denmark and the Netherlands.
How many of those are monarchies?
Well, Susan, hold on a second.
Very close to all of them, aren't they?
So.
Yeah, and Susan, you're pointing to something. Alex, I can't believe you're asking this question. It's because of their shared values.
Oh, you said that wrong. You should have said, "Oh my God, I can't believe you just said that."
I no seriousness, I wonder if it's to do with financial control.
Well,
that
it
the
has to
City of
be
London is
something
able to
because, there's got to be at least some political process in those nations to say, what's better for us? To end up going to war against our massively bigger neighbor, who is also a nuclear superpower, Russia, to get along with them, to trade, to be in peace, to develop our economies? Or do we put ourselves under British command and go under their let's you and him fight system of waging wars?
Well, I think what you're seeing, and we referenced this earlier. I think you're seeing a certain coming out of the closet in terms of who's really running these countries. Because you put forward the assumption, one presumes there's some process in this country, whereby you make decisions where your decisions will have something to do with your population. No. That's the fairy tale that they fed people for a very, very long time. And I think it's sort of like Donald Trump was the little boy who stood up and said the emperor has no clothes on. And these guys are now saying, well, I guess we ought to admit we're naked. I mean, I really think it is just sort of the naked exercise of who is really running the world coming out. What I referenced earlier was this appointment of this new governor general in Canada. And as bad as she is coming out of the Soros networks, was Carney's press conference where he just let it all hang out, where he said, oh yeah, well, she's the commander in chief. The crown runs through all of our constitutions. She can dismiss the government. These are things they didn't want people thinking about or knowing about. And I think the more they describe the end of, admit, as Carney is the poster boy for now, well, the post-war rules-based order is toast. They're sort of like saying, okay, well, here's who we really are, and we got to put something new together. But there's no point in pretending any longer. I mean, they obviously would be happy to go back to pretending if they could, but I don't think they think it's working. And
I just wish they would pretend to be wearing clothes, because I don't want to be like, I'm having a heart, the image that you just put in my head of King Charles naked.
Ursula von der Leyen.
Maybe when she was 35, but not.
Alex, thank you for coming in. I know you were delayed. You did let us know beforehand. Yeah. We were talking about what's happening in the US domestically,
right?
But if there's anything else you want to bring up, because we've already talked about the United Kingdom in a separate conversation, and Romania, and I mean, you'll find out when you watch the videos again, because you subscribe and comment and like, and about
and
my
he
new
needs
channel.
to go to sleep tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but if there's anything else you want to bring up, Alex.
Well, I don't know. It's come to the point where it's just absolutely crazy. We had this week. So the Jeff was 23 April, so that's like 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. Jeff, Joint Expeditionary Force,
right?
Then we had this new pandemic drive again, the sales pitch going on, and it looks like everybody's trying to take it serious, but if you go on social media, nobody's buying it. Right. Like literally nobody's buying it, and everybody is piling in on them, but they're trying. then the climate crisis, which is just 180 degrees.
Yeah.
Al Gore went out and he's like, global freezing, global freezing. You'd think it's a joke, but he's dead serious. It's almost like we've always been at war with Eurasia, right to we've always been at war at East Asia. It's just insane.
Alex, I just got to say about the global freezing. The Sun, I think it was the Sun newspaper, which is the best-selling newspaper in Britain. They were talking about how there's going to be serious heat in Britain in the next few weeks. 26 degrees C, 80 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know how we're going to get by. 26 degrees C.
You poor guys, you won't have to heat or cool your homes. Wow. Amazing. I don't know how you're going to survive that with 100-hour barrel oil. The thing is, what we were talking about earlier, just to finish off the one point, you have all these things happening, right, as Alex pointed out. But let's go and really talk about why they're panicking, which is that
they're clearly panicking, yes.
Because we got the early results on what's going to happen in the midterms. That's mostly what we've been talking about for this particular video.
I want to hear. I read some stuff on Twitter, but I didn't get into it. I'm dying to know.
Aside from the fact that Trump basically swept the primaries, as Susan and I have already discussed so far, to catch you up real quick. It was insane what's happened. So everything you see on social media about what's going to happen to the MAGA movement and all this rest of stuff, none of it's true. It's just a marketing campaign, and that marketing campaign has now failed. So they have to now shift 180 degrees. Kind of what your point about global cooling now is exactly what I was talking about earlier. Well, they tried this marketing campaign, it failed. So now we're going to try a new marketing campaign, and then we'll try another one later on. Especially since today we got the biggest news, which is that the Supreme Court struck down the Virginia redistricting referendum after Florida, after the other things that have happened, after the Supreme Court ordering multiple states, no, you are not allowed to push your primaries back. Tough. You will redistrict because it's unconstitutional to operate your elections this way. Period. Paragraph. End of story. Try again. So Louisiana, Alabama, so the whole South. I mean, I'm sure everybody's seen the maps of this. It's like there's going to be like two blue districts in all of like the South, Orlando and West Palm, and pretty much it. And the rest of it is just
By the way, Alex, this is what fed into the Indiana thing. Previously, the Republican Senate in Indiana had refused to redistrict at Trump's request. Trump said, I'm going to primary every single one of you SOBs. And he primaried them and he wiped them out. Double digits. I mean, including people who had been in there for 40 years got wiped out. And that, so I mean, that was just like an exit that came after the Supreme Court decision.
Yes, it did.
Yes, it was very nice timing that they waited for the Supreme Court decision. Then you have the Indiana primary, and Trump basically, and the entire, trad media here, is just, their hair is on fire that, oh my God, we were wrong. Trump still runs MAGA. I mean, that's what that said. But then there was the Virginia. There was a separate thing where the Virginia Democrats. Remember, we have a CIA agent as the governor of Virginia. This woman Spamberger, who campaigned as a moderate and then just came out of the closet as Godzilla, and they pushed through the craziest redistricting proposal probably in the entire country. And they just figured we can get away with it. We're going to do it. You know, where Virginia, I think the overall state of Virginia, the breakdown might be 60% Republican, 40% Democrat, something like that. Maybe not quite that extreme, but still overwhelmingly the state as a whole is Republican. This redistricting would have left 1 Republican and 10 Democrats. I mean, that's how crazy it was. So it was appealed, and it went to the Virginia Supreme Court, the Virginia State Supreme Court. You know, and our friend Barbara Boyd, who knows these courts better than anybody should have to, she was sitting there saying, I don't know. This court is not good. This court was appointed by, not good people. I don't know what's going to happen. And they ruled today. This is so bad. It's thrown out the window. So this was the big victory for the Democrats, was this particular redistricting. Yeah, they got it in California, but California's California. So you put together the Supreme Court decision, this decision in Virginia. You also look at the disarray in the Democratic Party. We talked about that in terms of their financing collapsing. I'm on the ground here in Michigan. It is a shitstorm in the Democratic Party. You basically have 3 factions. You have the Democrats, who are pretty much backed by AIPAC. You've got the left-wing pro-Palestinians, and then you've got the extreme left-wing pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah. I mean, that's the Democratic Party in Michigan at this point. Average blue-collar worker, and that's who they nominated at a recent convention for a bunch of the, not the top positions, but other positions. So you're going to have blue-collar workers here in Michigan saying, seriously? That's
the net, the TLDR on all this for you out, that the Republicans have picked up, I think, net 14.
Wow.
Okay. Because Virginia was an 8, it's an 8 point. Swing, right? Going back to the original Virginia thing by taking those 4 off the board. You've got Florida redistricted, Louisiana and Alabama have redistricted. Tennessee came through; they're going to redistrict completely. Clyburn, this is the big one, but this is a deep cut on American politics. In South Carolina, there's one racially based gerrymandered district in South Carolina, and it's the one that Jim Clyburn runs, and he's been there forever and a day. And he is the linchpin for all of the Democrats' fundraising And the primary process for the presidency, because of course we do South Carolina first, and whoever comes out of South Carolina to the Democrats usually gets the nomination. And that was going to be Kamala Harris's path to getting the nomination, which is why nobody was like thinking at all for 2028. Clyburn is going to get redistricted and is going to get removed. And if that's the case, the whole Democratic Party in effect collapses because they don't have a bench. They were planning on running Kamala Harris in 2028. Okay. And I mean, that was the best thing to have because Gavin Newsom can't get. And the thing is, and you have to remember the other thing is that the president and the vice president have to come from different states. It's important. If you look at what's left in the Democratic Party, well, it can't be Newsom and Harris. They're both from California. So there's a lot happening here. But the Clyburn thing is a deep cut that looks ahead to 2028. And you take all of that, it will have profound effect on the ability of the Democrats to function and get out the vote across North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. It pretty much guarantees a sweep of the South if you get rid of Clyburn for a variety of reasons. So this is right down and dirty practical politics, and down and dirty politics is as dirty as it's ever been, and good, because we've always had a GOP that, you know, fights fair. That's another way of saying they're controlled opposition. We're not doing that anymore. That is not on the table anymore, folks. We are not in this version of Kansas. We are in a fundamentally different world. And so for that reason, and those reasons alone, it's the Democrats' path to taking the midterms means they have to win all of the toss-ups because I think the Republicans now have 216 hard seats, hard wins.
And Tom, that doesn't even take into account what Trump is going to do in terms of cleaning up the electoral process. The SAVE Act.
We haven't even started. We haven't even begun this fight yet. And then to remind everybody, as I said, to remind Alex, because Susan and I have already discussed this in this video, which is that most of America doesn't give a crap about the midterms. And I mean most, by like 92% of Americans do not give a shit about the midterms until around October.
Yeah.
The campaign season doesn't start until July, and that's only for the candidates who start setting their electoral strategy to start campaigning when they go on recess in August to go home and campaign. That's it. This whole idea that we should be talking about the midterms for a year beforehand to turn the midterm elections into another presidential cycle.
Or that the oil prices today are going to affect the midterms?
No, not at all.
I mean, not unless they're $5 at the midterms,
Right.
which I don't think they're going to be.
I think what we plan on seeing is, yeah, I mean, we can already see it. I mean, you and I talked about this last weekend when we were in Atlanta together, and you can look at the chart of the weekly chart of Brent crude, and it's clearly a domed house that wants to collapse. It's so obviously being pushed up by the news cycle as opposed to what it wants to do, which is to push down. Clearly, oil's in backwardation on a forward futures contract. I mean, like all of it. So it's so, you know, and someone was really manipulating the price of gasoline on the futures market too, by the way, like really, really hard on very low volume. I watch like a hawk. It's one of the things I watch on a regular basis. And I'm just watching the RBOB gasoline futures contract. And I think it was running $3.30 a gallon the other day. It was running $3.70 on Monday. And then the latest bits of news that came out, and it just dropped like a rock. So, and the oil can't recover. So, you know, coming into the end of the week. So I think we're going to close it. What did we close it today? $100 a barrel on Brent crude? Something like that. I'll check. You go ahead, Alex. I'll check.
Yeah, I don't even know. Last I looked, it was 104, but you know, it's been going down like
$100, 100.36, $100.36 on the Brent crude. With I'll check the spread on WTI, and it's probably about $7 spread between that and WTI.
Okay, so oil's going.
Yeah, $6 spread on WTI. So,
well, that's great. That's good news.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's going to be a fight, you know, and we have to keep people focused on the economy, which is sort of what I do
right.
in all my all my output, which is just calm down. This is what they're actually doing. And you're gonna start to feel it. You're certainly gonna see it. We have to make sure they see it. And then
Jobs
a lot of
reports.
people are gonna start to feel it. I have one really terrific anecdote, just in terms of what is out there. I was at a manufacturing forum 2 weeks ago, and it was mostly aerospace manufacturing and other things. And one of the guys on the panel said they had put the Michigan Maritime Institute had put up billboards in Detroit, where the household income is like $25,000, right? Nobody can afford a car because the car insurance is so high. There's no public transit, so you're basically trapped in a WEF, world of something. They put up big billboards saying, "You want to build submarines?" It's put up by the Michigan Maritime Institute. You had kids from the hood figuring out how to get in touch with this institute, signing up, going into like a 20-week training program, and coming out with a good paying job.
Wow.
Now, that to me
That's-
is the key to the midterms.
Yes. Yeah.
That's extraordinary. That's extraordinary. Okay. Thank you, Tom, Susan, Alex. Thank you for coming in, for being fashionably
We
late.
missed you.
The best bit.
Really?
The best bit of the whole
We were
program.
boring.
That's right.
No.
Everybody always says, "Oh, you guys just all agree with each other. You're boring." Where's Alex?
I don't agree with that, Susan. I don't agree with that.
All right.
Okay.
Well, I'm just saying. I just saw some comments a couple of times.
So,
Oh,
thank you.
by the way, I just wanted to mention this, Susan, congratulations. Congratulations. You've been getting massive traction. I'm seeing people on X posting little excerpts of your videos and your interviews, and they're like, "You have to hear what this woman has to say. This woman has to go to Joe Rogan." So, and usually what they post is you shining the flashlight at the Brits.
That's
And so I
it.
think that's, you're doing a service to humanity. So congratulations, and I'm very, very happy to see that.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
no, I would-
that just reminds me of something, because when Susan, you and I recorded with Blaine Holt, I did get a fair few comments saying, yes, Susan Kokinda for Supreme Court Justice. Just so you know.
Susan for president.
Let us know if you'd like Susan to be U.S. president. Let us know in the comments, right?
See, yeah, there's a woman president that I can get behind. There's no problem.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Tom, Susan, Alex, thank you so much. Please subscribe to my newsletter and also my new channel.
Are determined to have been murdered. 75% of Alaska Native women. I mean, the statistics are just shocking and deeply, deeply troubling. Alaska is the fourth highest state when it comes to Indigenous women in the country. Obviously, we have a large Indigenous population, but it is something where when you listen to the statements from so many Native women that they feel unsafe in their home communities. They feel unsafe in their villages, and they feel probably most unsafe in the biggest village, which is Anchorage. We're working on trying to make some headway here in this space, but we really need to understand where the gaps are. And we talk a lot about the data gaps. And so I'm raising this with you, Director Patel, and asking for your support and that of your team. You have great folks in Alaska, but I would suggest that given we have a small population, big landmass, and a problem and statistics that just don't match up to our demographics, that we need some help. We've got good cooperation between all of our federal agencies, working with our tribal partners and with the state. But I would just ask your commitment today that if you haven't already trained a focus in this area, that you will commit to helping us in Alaska.
Absolutely, Senator. That's why we launched Operation Steadfast Promise, which is the first ever of its kind year-long campaign for crimes on tribal lands across the country, to include Alaska. And I'm proud to tell you today that one of the biggest problems I was informed about over the last 14 months was communication gaps.
Yep.
And the FBI, for the first time ever, completed its pilot program on the Navajo Reservation down in Phoenix area with Starlink capabilities. And we are now going to be delivering to every SAC Starlink capabilities specifically and solely for communications on tribal lands to conduct and investigate tribal investigations.
Well, and I just might add that the communications is one thing amongst the law enforcement, but it's also communicating back to the families,
Yes.
the families that are so anxious. And this is where I think we have some real failures, if you will. And I'm stressing it with regards to Alaska, but it is Alaska Natives, but also American Indians, as you've pointed out there. So I appreciate your commitment on that level. I wanted to ask about your comment, Administrator Cole, when you were talking about the fentanyl that we're seeing coming from China into Canada and then coming back in. Vancouver is not too far away from where we're sitting over there in the Northwest. I want to just confirm that as we are focusing on intercepts at the southern border, we're not taking our eye off the ball when it comes to the northern border. And this is to you, Administrator Cole, when it comes to the drugs, but also to you, Director Patel, in terms of the terrorist threats that we may see who
ahead and they can't figure out what's going
border as perhaps being more porous, certainly longer in my state. So if the two of you can speak to that.
Senator, from a DEA perspective, we're keeping our eye on Canada. We're going to open 2 more offices in Canada, proposed for 27. But we will continue to do outreach. We'll continue to work with the tribal and the Native Americans. When it comes to educating them, providing them resources.
So we have 2
the tremendous working
organizations here.
relationship we have with the U.S. Postal Service, with interesting packages that are leaving the states going into Alaska. For example, in April, we had a targeted enforcement where we got 10 kilos of fentanyl in multiple packages that were going into Alaska, and 5 kilos of methamphetamine that were leaving domestically going into Alaska as well. So this is the importance of the holistic approach, opening more offices, but keeping our eye on this cause and effect that we see from the Mexican cartels now entering into Canada.
Thank you. Director?
Yes, Senator. What we've done specifically on the northern border front is launch and stand up the first of its kind Homeland Security Task Force in Alaska, which allows us to take a lot of the funding and resources that we have access to and put more agents and intel folks, not just from the FBI, but from the other agencies across the board. And what we've also focused on, at least at the FBI, is working with our Canadian partners on the production capabilities that the drug traffickers have moved up to the north of our border, and specifically fly into Alaska and also into mainland America on tribal lands. And we've had some success there working with our Canadian partners because the drug traffickers got smart with the securitization of the southern border and moved it up there. So we're tackling that with our CEAS partners.
Thank you for not taking the ball off that. I have a question for Director Serralta regarding the federal detention facility in Alaska. We do not have a federal detention facility in our state, so all inmates have to be housed at a state prison, or more often they're just sent out of state. And it is at considerable cost to our U.S. Marshals to transport these federal inmates. We have asked for a feasibility study to determine whether it's now time to do that. Senator Stevens' request. I've got report language in a past appropriations bill about a new study, but quite honestly, the response that we received from the department has been pretty lacking in detail, and so I would ask you, Director, if you'd be willing to take a look at this and have a conversation with us about the need in the state of Alaska.
Senator, thank you for your question. The answer to your question is yes. I'm willing to look at anything that will facilitate the in a safe manner. Use about 80% of our jails are state and locals. That's throughout the nation, so it's not uncommon. However, there is perhaps a Bureau of Prison prison project that may work well in Alaska, but I would have to see what.
I'd look forward to a conversation with you about it. We unfortunately don't have anything that comes cheap when it comes to taking care of our federal inmates, whether it's on the state side or shipping them out. And so it is a cost matter, but it also is a great burden on our U.S. Marshals.
It
and
sure
I
is.
appreciate the good
Thank
work
you.
that you do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Murkowski. Senator Van Hollen and I are going to just have a couple of wrap-up questions, and then we'll conclude the hearing, and I'll turn to Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Director Patel, I've been listening carefully to your responses to some of my colleagues, and I want to start with a question that Senator Coons asked you that relates to this article where the headline firings ousted agents with expertise in Iran. The article says that these individuals were fired for their role in the classified documents investigations of Donald Trump. First of all, is that true?
The article, just like all the other articles you cited, is false, and there's ongoing litigation, so I can't address it.
Okay. You did answer Senator Coons, and I understood your answer to be that the people that were fired, that none of them were part of a group that had Iran. Is that your answer?
No, he asked if they were Iran experts. I said they were not.
Were the group fired? Did it include people who were Iran experts?
No.
Did it include people who were involved in counter-espionage activities with respect to Iran?
I don't have the list in front of me.
So you don't know whether or not you fired people with counter-espionage experience with respect to Iran. You don't know the answer to that question.
I terminated anyone and everyone that weaponized law enforcement.
I see. So it was related, obviously, to the classified documents case. So
that's not what
I understood you to say that you've not redirected FBI resources toward the immigration enforcement effort.
That's not what I said.
Okay. Have you redirected resources away from your core FBI responsibilities toward the mass deportation effort?
No one at the FBI has been permanently reassigned on the immigration front, and when we pull the numbers, the FBI's overall operational field expenditures surged periodically for immigration enforcement activities, including the arrest of 2,000 people with direct ties to foreign terrorist organizations, was 2.4%.
So, okay. So the key word there, I guess, was permanently. You have not permanently reassigned. Is that what you reassigned temporarily?
Surges, yes, sir.
Okay. Have you had a chance to listen to or read about Brian Driscoll's statements about what you said to him and the reasons for his firing?
No, I have not, sir.
So let me just say this, Mr. Director. In your response to me earlier, where you had a little bit of a blow-up, you made a couple provably false statements.
So did you.
No, Mr. Director, I was reading about and asking you to respond to allegations that are made. In fact, I was giving you an opportunity to do that, and you took that opportunity. But in the process, you made these provably false statements that I know are sort of like urban legend in right-wing media about margaritas in El Salvador, which is false. And so that are provably false. And this is from the mouth of the FBI director.
The only one that made false statements is you.
My final question to you, Mr. Director, is do you know that it is a crime to lie to Congress? That's
I have not lied to Congress.
I didn't ask
The
you
one
that.
lied to Congress is you.
Do you?
And
I'm not testifying here, sir, and I don't lie.
maybe the next time you run up a $7,000 bar tab, we can talk about it.
Well, see, there you go, lying again. You suggested
In the FEC report, I'll post it right now.
You suggested it was
Hang on.
public. It wasn't public money, as you know. That was for a 50. I'm glad. Let me just say in closing, Mr. Chairman, two things. I'm glad that you have agreed to take the test regarding, whether you have alcohol problems. I'm glad you agreed with me to do that. You still haven't answered my final question. Do you know, Mr. Director, that it is a crime to lie to Congress? Do you know that?
I do not lie to Congress. You're insinuating that I am.
Whether you know.
You want to correct your time in this session where you got steamrolled by the facts so you can have a Twitter narrative so you can go raise more money and spend more money on $7,000 bar tabs.
Just let the record
I'm not
show,
going to give
Mr.
it
Chairman.
to you.
The director of the FBI apparently does not want to answer the question about whether or not it's a crime to lie to Congress, and I find that
troubling.
Director, the fact that you can't answer that question, I will. That concludes my questioning, Mr. Chairman. But I'm obviously very troubled.
Question for the Director of ATF. Director Sakata, I want to talk just a minute about NIBIN. I don't need to explain to you what NIBIN is, but it is a very useful tool in involving violent crimes and illegal firearms. While I strongly support the Second Amendment and the right of law-abiding citizens to own guns and carry guns, I also believe that the responsibility we have with law enforcement is to make certain you have the tools to target violent criminals who use firearms to terrorize communities. Your budget requests a program increase of $7.8 million to support NIBIN. I wanted to give you the opportunity for me to hear the reason for that increase and how that tool will be helpful to law enforcement officials in my home state of Kansas.
Good afternoon, Senator. Thank you again for your question and your support of ATF, in particular with the crime gun intelligence services that we provide to our state and local partners. NIBIN is one of the three legs to the stool of crime gun intelligence and probably one of the most important. Our correlation review specialists are housed in two facilities, one in Huntsville, Alabama, and one in Wichita. They review approximately 3,000 images per day that are received from our state and local partners. Those images are fired cartridge casings that are recovered in crime scenes from across the country. Those experts, which we call correlation review specialists, have a capacity as to how many images they can review over their 8-hour shift and be able to successfully match to a crime scene out in the field. We currently run 2 shifts, about 16 hours a day, in both of those facilities, and we service approximately 12,000 police departments around the country. We have a pending backlog of about 30 police departments that are waiting to be added to NIBIN, and many more that are seeking support in acquiring a brass tracks machine, which is the actual machine that takes the images of either the fired cartridge casing or a test fired casing on a firearm we would recover from a crime scene.
They've been on the forefront
capacity
of investment in infrastructure that the world is deploying. The largest investors today in infrastructure.
Brass tracks machines.
And one of the things I wanted to touch base on is that many of the financial problems that we've seen over the years have been related to a couple areas. One, match of liabilities and assets in terms of the dramatic changes in interest rates and what. We lost 2 great franchises, Silicon Valley Bank and Republic Bank, because they chose to make intermediate investments, 7-year debt in U.S. governments or high-grade mortgages, and borrowed overnight. And what looked like a positive spread at 3% or 2 3/4 when they were paying 5.5% overnight for money. Both of them are not independent companies. Both Bruce and Larry have seen this occur time and time again over the last 30 years. And so I just wanted to start by giving you a feeling of the strength of these organizations. And when we talk about the risk of redemptions relative to the size of their organizations, Bruce, let's start with you. What percent of your assets that you manage are redeemable on a quarterly basis?
Probably less than 1%.
Okay, so everything you've read about this year, about private credit and redemptions, less than 1% of assets. And Larry, what do you think?
It's certainly less than 1%.
A fraction. And so we've defined an issue. Why did this occur? You could ask yourself, both of these organizations were built to identify long-term investors who could make long-term investments with themselves serving as the mediator. We're well aware that the banking system, that the capital structure is probably 2 years at best. And so the challenges they have met the needs to help build the world, the U.S., our economy, by matching and being the intermediary between people that have long-term assets and people who need long-term investors from that standpoint. So Bruce, you're one of the couple largest institutional investors in the world, largest clean energy investor in the world, both fundamental elements in the rollout of AI. Is the opportunity to supply AI infrastructure as exciting as Brookfield has told us?
So I think if you step back, Mike, and there's a lot going on in this, and it gets, it's exciting, but what's most important is that really what's happening is that we have been, and we still are, and for the next 10 years we will be, rewiring the global economy to lay the networks that we laid before, which were highways, utilities, railways, and now we're laying cloud, artificial intelligence factories, and data centers. And that, on the fundamental basis, that's what's happening. So there will be $10 trillion from power, AI, factories, data centers, and fiber build-out laid to basically rewire the world for the new economy that's coming. And it's been slowly coming. Like it literally, you end up, things happen and you think they're too much, but we're just rewiring the world. And that's probably the most fundamental thing that's going on in the world. Is going to be the most important thing for the next 2 years. So I think the important thing is don't think that this is it too much hype. Yes, there's always too much hype in some different thing, but we're just rewiring the world, and there's going to be enormous investment, and it's not 1 year or 2 years, it's 10, and maybe it's 15, and maybe it's 20, but it's an enormous amount of capital going into these things.
We're looking at the multi-trillion-dollar build-out across energy, AI, transportation, all of these elements. What are the real constraints on getting capital deployed? Capital itself, labor, regulation, or something else?
Well, Mike, it's good to be here, and thank everybody.
It took us 29 years to get you here.
We went to the same high school. It's never too late, right?
We're both young.
Right. Let me just start off with the conclusion. The United States is short power, we're short compute, we're short chips, and there are going to be shortages in all three, and memory, other things. I actually believe in, you asked about futures of compute. We just don't have enough compute power right now.
and you think about how many tokens you need to analyze, let's say, your cybersecurity, it is enormous. And we're reading all about the whole issues that's going on. And that's just the huge opportunity, the amount of money that needs to be going there. So we try to eliminate some of these shortages. We're moving fast enough. There is not an AI bubble. There is the opposite. We have supply shortages. Demand is growing much faster than anyone anticipated. And this is just a U.S. phenomenon. We have not begun the whole concept of exploring the opportunities of AI around the world. And there's going to be some huge geopolitical questions as to who gets that technology. And so, the future is today. The AI phenomenon is happening faster than any of the programmers and the designers of this. The speed of intelligence is growing. The opportunity is very large. Yes, it's going to be disruptive, but it is also very opportunistic. And we have to talk about it. And I believe as a country, as a world, we're not spending enough time working with government alongside the private sector to try to solve these very big issues. There was a slide of all the different CapEx a second ago related to the railroads and all the other issues. The amount of
capital slide back up, please.
Expenditures for this, as Bruce suggested, $10 trillion. That's just for the U.S. And let me also, though, bring back the whole notion of what's going on in the Middle East, where there's going to be huge opportunities there. But now, because of drone warfare, we have to relook at all forms of security and the need for rebuilding the GCC region, to rebuild it so that it's going to be in a position where it's not going to be obstructed by drone warfare. So many more things are going to have to be underground. But even here in the United States, if we're going to be building, let's say, these 1 gigawatt data centers, how do we make sure we're not protecting those $50 billion, $75 billion investments? We have to relook at everything because of the role of drone warfare. Right now, we're looking at it internationally, but one of my concerns is, could it be a domestic terrorism using a $3,000 drone? So all of these things are actually opportunities, not problems. It's going to require, as we said, trillions of dollars of capital. Governments cannot build these out alone. They don't have the wherewithal. And two, their deficits are started to be mounting. And we spend too little time talking about the U.S. deficits and other countries' deficits. So this is all going to be the role of private sector.
And Mike, I was going to just add that when you think of what's going on in private markets, so we have $1.2 trillion of assets, it's all private things. 50% of the things that we own today did not exist as an investable asset class 15 years ago. So it's not that we don't build pipelines and we don't build rail and we don't own all those things, but the incremental money in the world is going into the fiber backbone, cloud backbone, and now AI backbone. And 10 years from today, I expect that it will be 75. And it's just the world is transforming, and the infrastructure of the world is dramatically transforming. And that's, so you need to look at what's next, what's coming next, and this build out is very, very significant.
I just want to identify one very simple fact. Today, it's impossible for your clinician, your doctor, to give you the best advice. They want to give you the best advice, but it's impossible with 100 new developments all over the world being released. So, since our phones, we can find you, obviously it won't be long before you can have your medical teammate who has all your clinician, all information, will have surveyed everything in the world that's gone on overnight while you were sleeping. And therefore, we have to think who's going to power billions of these, and the same thing's going to happen in education. But what we've seen here and this artificial intelligence, and here's a slide, 4 times the accuracy of a human doctor. So these should be available to every single person on the planet someday, and you can imagine. Now, one of the exciting things, Larry and Bruce, when we were financing the telecom and everything, we had a hard time finding an investment-grade credit, okay? It was new, it was risky, and so talk to me a little bit about who are your clients today that you're helping. Larry, you want to start with that? Who are your clients? I'm not speaking now of your investors, but who's knocking on your door every day?
Over 50% of our assets of the $14+ trillion we manage are retirement assets. And so our investors are somebody who awarded us $1,000 of their savings through our IRA account. We also have investors who have allocated over $100 billion of their balance sheet to us. And I wrote about this in my last CO letter. I think it's our investors are going to be more and more of those people, families, individuals who historically kept their money in a bank account. And what we've seen over the last 30 years, wages have not kept up with capital. And what we're seeing worldwide, more and more countries are looking to build out their own capital markets. And building their own capital markets through offering a more self-directed retirement plan. Actually, we've just been hired by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to help them navigate away from a government-sponsored retirement system to a direct, personal, direct defined contribution plan. Our partnership in India with Reliance is really trying to democratize investing and growing with India and investing in India. These are going to be our investors of the future. And more countries are focusing on how to build out their own domestic capital markets. If you think of the success of Japan and where the Japanese stock market has gone since October 2023, it's not a coincidence that then Prime Minister Kishida announced the doubling of the tax-their self-directed retirement account called NISA. And from that point on, the Japanese stock market doubled in valuation. And so there's a confluence of going on right now that more and more countries are trying to have more and more of their citizens getting back to their liability and their assets. Instead of having your liability, which is your liability of life, your duration of your existence, having your money in a bank account is one of the worst financial decisions of a lifetime. And so trying to get more and more people to grow with their country and to invest side by side, that is the only way we are going to broaden economic success. We're not going to be able to broaden economic success only by wages, because wages, AI world, are not going to grow as fast as the potential of the AI growth and the potential and capital that is going to be investing in these investments will outperform.
Thank you. So Bruce, we've talked about the advantages of being long-term investors. How does that mindset influence how you underwrite, allocate capital, and how does it shape the way you think about trade-offs between public and private markets?
So the greatest miracle of investing, finance, in fact, almost everything is compounding of everything. Compounding interest, compounding returns, compounding knowledge, compounding wealth. And if one can compound those things over long periods of time, it's a miracle. If you can earn north of 12, nothing else matters. So don't try to earn 35. It's good if you earn 35. But don't try to earn 35, earn 12 every year for very long periods of time. Just witness Berkshire Hathaway. And I'd say that's probably the most important thing in finance. So we're always trying to figure out, and what our clients are telling us increasingly, remember, all we do is private assets. yes, drawdown funds are important, and we have to have them, and we do have them, but many of our investors want to have other things with us outside of drawdown funds. They want to have continuity assets that are the great ones we shouldn't sell, and that we can carry on with them for long periods of time. Because these funds, the large groups in the world, which again are all just individuals, they're all either, in some way it goes back to individuals, but these funds are very, very significant. And 20 years ago, they were 100 billion, and that was a large pool of money. And today it's $1 trillion, and there will be 30 funds north of $1 trillion soon. And these are going to be $5 to $10 trillion pools of capital. And they can't churn assets all the time. Yes, some things they can churn, but what they should do is own great businesses for long periods of time and compound capital, and that's actually the success of business. And the more we can do that for our clients, increasingly, that's what binds us to them for success. And small groups can do that for small individuals or people. We try to do it in large scale for large groups or large amounts of capital.
So Larry mentioned Japan, and Bruce talked about 12%. So when Japan was yielding close to zero, if you wanted to save $1 million, you had to put away $25,000 a year for 40 years for your retirement. That's zero. If you could get 12% that Bruce is throwing out here, a one-time contribution of $10,800 gets you to $1 million. So it is the rate of. Now, I've noticed, Larry, that since you went public, your stock has generated a 22% compound rate of return. We all wish we had invested more in Bruce's stock and your stock today.
Mike, the best is yet to come.
What?
The best is yet to come.
Okay. Okay, Bruce.
We're taking
All
the
right,
stock this morning.
Truth, I'm an investor both in BlackRock and in Brookfield, so I'm happy to hear the best is yet to come. So let's talk, Larry, for a moment here. We addressed the fact that we're going to let individuals get their own money, their own account in the world, and you in your letter, which has pretty much replaced the Buffett letter now, is the letter to read. Talked about investing in your country, in your state, wherever you live here. As I mentioned before, if I went back 40 years, we couldn't find an investment-grade company to loan sizable money to in technology. Today, when you're talking about hyperscalers, you have companies with trillions of dollars of equity at the moment that are many of your largest committed money. What is it like when someone walks in the door, Larry, and says they want to borrow $50 billion?
Working with the hyperscalers is a fairly recent phenomenon. Before that, they were generating so much internal cash flow, they actually rarely went to the debt market. And because we're one of the top 2 largest shareholders, we've known these companies for years and years and years, and almost every hyperscaler, I think we're either 1, 2, or 3 of the largest shareholders. So we have a deep relationship with them. But it wasn't until a few years ago where I had breakfast with one of the major CEOs of one of the top few hyperscalers, and their stock was trading around a 30 PE. And I noticed before, I did a little studying before I had the breakfast, and I saw on their balance sheet they're owning a lot of data centers. And at breakfast I told the CEO, I said, "Why do you own these?" I said, this is the beauty of the capital markets. We would enjoy a 15% return plus or minus. It is dragging down, your ownership of data centers are actually dragging down your equity return. And from those conversations on, now you're seeing all these hyperscalers either raising a lot of debt or they're partnering partnering with Brookfield or BlackRock or other firms in terms of either trying to find financing or partnering, whether they have the ownership of the data centers and doing it through debt, which I don't believe is a good long-term solution for them, or they're partnering with these big, large data centers that we all own. And it's much more capital efficient for these companies to be doing that. And I think that's what you're witnessing right now. You know, look at, as Bruce was talking about, the role of AI and the need for, you know, the chips and the memory and the land and the compute and the electricity, the power. We're talking 50 to 75 billion for a 1 gigawatt data center. We're actually going to be announcing a 1 gigawatt data center partnership with a hyperscaler this week. These are really complex things because of Bruce and Brookfield, we're both in the market of attracting long-term capital to work with these hyperscalers who have great financial needs. You think about it on the behalf of the investors, you know, we're trying to secure a 15, 20-year lease with a AAA company. So it's a great return for a pension fund, for 401k, for a sovereign wealth fund, for an insurance company. And so much of it is going to be financed by debt, and that's going to be a big role of private credit in financing this build out of America. So I believe ultimately we're going to see shortages of capital, the amount of capital that we need. And if more and more countries are going to be self-directing more of their savings domestically, it's going to be putting some challenges here. So we need to just be much more thoughtful about it. But you know, right now, I look at this as a perfect opportunity for long-term investors to be part of this unbelievable, once-of-a-life growth opportunity and to be an investor in it.
Bruce, you over the years have built Brookfield with a number of acquisitions. And one of those was Oaktree here, which has been a major source of financing in the credit markets, etc. How do you maintain the culture of Brookfield as you absorb these different organizations?
So as we built out the business, it's been 30 years, I guess, on the asset management side as opposed to our investment business. And there were pieces of the pie that we just weren't strong in. And we, over the years, would meet groups, and we figured out that if we could slowly bring managers in, Larry's done it a little bit differently, but we decided if you could slowly bring them in over time and buy them out and assimilate them into your organization, we got the best of both. So we have various partnerships where we have a path to control in all of them. But we've done it slowly and methodically, and we've just added where we needed to broaden out the organization because what the big organizations in the world need today is they need solutions for them. They don't need our products. We don't sell products to people anymore. Yes, they buy our funds, but what we need to give them are solutions to their problems. Absolutely. And by having all of those things within the house, we can slice up the pieces, because if you come in for an apple and we try to sell you an orange, because we're only selling oranges this week, it doesn't work. And what we can now do is listen to our clients, hear what their issues are, and we're creating bespoke products for people. We did one the other day. We're doing one, and it's a very long-tailed liability for an institution where we're taking money from them and we don't have to give capital back to them for 27 years. We give money back 27 to year 50. It's incredible. It's the compounding machine of all time. And I was super excited about it because it solves one of their needs. And I'd say that's what we're doing, and what the what our partner manager strategy allowed us to do was to just reshape how we were able to deliver products to people. Because yes, you could say we're going to go outside and put a bunch of managers to have them in-house. It's much more valuable. And we just needed extra pieces to the pie.
I think it's important to fully understand how these institutions of Brookfield and BlackRock today can accommodate. It was maybe a decade ago that you had two pension funds that gave money for 10 years, no returns for 10 years, not 27. And you had to compound it during that period of time. Only two money managers wanted that money because they were worried about what was the rate to deploy the money during that period of time and whether you could meet them. So Larry, you know, today when the demand is trillions, there aren't a lot of doors you can knock on today and have that conversation. And in many ways, you have broader relationships as clients consolidate around this. And as if you have defined the challenges here, you might have a few people in the audience from these hyperscalers or others around the world. How do you get in touch with BlackRock?
Well, let me just carry on what Bruce said, because I think this is why people are getting in touch with BlackRock. We organized the firm over the last 30-plus years to be at the nexus of both public and private markets, but also in 2009 when we bought BGI, the nexus of passive and active, which most people have said you can't even merge those cultures, and actually the stock market hated that acquisition in 2009 when we announced it. You can't marry a passive and active. At that time, iShares had $340 billion, and today it's $6 trillion. So I think you can marry passive and active and pivot around that on behalf of clients. And the same thing now goes for not just for public and privates, but also public and privates and so having a one solution organization that can navigate around public and private markets, passive and active investment technology. This is why we are building this large platform that's pretty close to $15 trillion today. Working side by side with our clients. It's all, as Bruce said, it's all solution based. Whether it's working with a RIA channel where we're providing models, or taking over whole portfolios of an entire pension fund, or the whole wealth management platform at Citibank when they allocated over $100 billion to us. So it is working on a solution base across the passive and active, public and private, overlaying technology, and then having those conversations with each and every client, sovereign wealth fund, insurance companies to pension funds. We have a unique business model of blending all that together, and it's last year we were awarded over $700 billion of net inflows from clients, and it is because we are working very close with our clients with this model.
So Bruce, you've seen this also, the consolidation of larger platforms and private markets getting better, bigger and bigger. What is really the dynamic you see driving this? Is it investor side who need to focus on longer term returns for a longer period of time? You just outlined one. Or is it coming from the potential to invest that you see a better, broader array of opportunities as you get larger? What is the driving force?
So first, I would say the consolidation is being driven by our clients. We're here for the clients. All we do is serve clients. And it's being driven by them. They want less people to deal with more skills, and they want to put more capital with less people. And on the opposite side, what that's driving is the opportunities with the hyperscalers, these are, as Larry said, they're 20, 30, 50, $100 billion capital. There's not many people that can do that. There's not many people that can build data centers, not many people that can build nuclear plants. There's not many people that can install solar et al. And if you do all of those, what it's creating is opportunities, and it just bifurcates the market between, yes, there's niche players, and there'll always be niche players, and the large investment groups that can serve the need of the clients because they want less people to deal with that are more sophisticated. And the opportunities available to those groups are much, much more significant. Risk is lower. Either return is higher or risk is lower. Those are both good things. Take somewhere in the middle, usually. The opportunities are greater for those larger groups. And that's why this is happening with us and a few others. And it's going to continue as the amounts of capital and wealth in the world grows.
I would just say with the AI economy, in every industry, we're going to see a K economy. You're going to have 1 or 2 or 3 winners in each economy, in each industry, and many smaller firms are going to be forced to merge or do something. But I believe the capex that every company is going to have to spend just on AI itself is going to increase this K economy concept in every industry in the world.
So if we take anything away from this panel this morning, there are more people interested in getting long-term rates of return than what's going to happen in the next 3 months or 4 months. And the ability to find those, such as BlackRock or Brookfield, to turn your capital over to, you can just imagine the trust an account has that has given money to Bruce and doesn't want any of it back for 27 years from Brookfield, but wants it as a return. And we've come a long way from 1968 when I gave the speech on Wall Street. What was the rate of return if you went up 100 one year and went down 50 the next year? And everyone told me it was 25% a year, 100 minus 50 divided by 2, even though it was 0. And I think this is why these organizations have grown so effectively, delivering long-term compounding returns to their investors rather than focusing on a short period of time. And that's why these companies were built. When Larry talks about investing, you can't really invest in the future if your liability structure is 1 to 2 years. And so we've seen so many of our banks go out of business with this idea of interest rate risk due to that volatility. Well, Bruce, you've told me the best is yet to come. I couldn't be more excited for you and Larry. Thank you for joining us today.
Good afternoon, good evening. I am thrilled to be here, but I am especially thrilled to be here with Jensen Huang. If there's anybody I want to talk to these days, it's this man, because he knows how to look around corners when it comes to AI. NVIDIA's in a quiet period right now, but what we want to hear from him, I think, is bigger picture. So let's start, Jensen, just by taking a few steps back. Again, everybody wants to know what's coming with AI. This is the fastest technological revolution we have ever seen. Things happen not in years, not in decades, but probably, weekly and monthly. At this point, things are changing pretty drastically. You're Wayne Gretzky. Tell us where the puck is going.
Well, first of all, let me tell you where the puck came from.
Okay.
And in just the last couple of years, what happened? I feel like I'm sitting on something that's causing all of this to happen. Is it me?
It might be me. Hold on. Better?
And so what happened was 2 years ago, ChatGPT came out. And what made ChatGPT revolutionary was the ability to generate AI. You give it a prompt, it can write you a story. You give it a prompt, it can make you.
So we have 2 organizations here that have been on the forefront of investing in infrastructure.
Mr. Diamond, thank you for having us. Thank you for being our host here in Paris. I mean, there's a lot riding. Look, the markets are optimistic. They're optimistic that there's some kind of resolution in the Middle East. Are they overlooking the worries about inflation?
Yeah. So first of all, welcome, happy to be here. I think there's a little bit too much exuberance out there. And it's not just the Middle East, it's Ukraine, Russia still there, America, China. There are a lot of these complex issues which may or may not affect the market, but then there are issues like inflation, today's print wasn't so good. So yeah, I think the market's kind of exuberant and it may not be completely justified.
So why are they so exuberant? If they're exuberant, are you expecting a correction? And is it because they're looking at AI?
No, I don't think it's AI. I think corporate profit is doing very well. AI will be a plus, so this year it's just a lot more spending, which may be a little inflationary too. But it's more corporate profits. We're doing a little bit more QE. Government's still spending a lot of money. The one big beautiful bill is kicking in. Stimulus offsetting a lot of the gas. I think the gas increase, the dollar of gas is $100 million. The one big beautiful bill is $100 billion that consumers pay. The one big beautiful bill is $300 billion. Deregulation is real. There are these things which are causing a pretty good market right now.
But when you talk about exuberance, it means that there's a market dislocation.
No,
where do you see that?
It means the stock market's in the top 10, 15%. Credit spreads are very low. The general assumption that these things are all going to resolve. And I'm kind of a skeptic. I don't know. I hope they do, but I don't know that they will.
Okay, what do chief executives worry about in private that they tell you that they won't tell us?
Not much.
Really?
Trade, America, the wars, oil prices. I mean, the same stuff you hear about all the time.
But CapEx, I know, we had a great earnings season.
Yeah.
Is the next one going to be less good?
Peter Piper persistently missed packaging, so he scheduled his deliveries with Amazon Business. Peter Piper, big peppers, but rhyme, and positively prospered. Amazon Business, your partner for smart business buying. Peter Piper's pepper picking proved painful, so he ordered the supplies he needed from Amazon Business. Peter Piper, big peppers, but rhyme.
Hey there, I'm Scott McLean. This is Counting the Cost on Al Jazeera, your look at the world of business and economics. In a rare act of defiance, China openly pushes back against U.S. sanctions and tells its companies accused of buying Iranian oil to ignore Washington's penalties. But can Beijing really challenge Washington's financial power? From rare earths
President Trump is flying to China this week. But if you want to understand what is really going on, you need to pay very close attention to what Russian President Putin just said. We started working with our major partner and friends, primarily with our friends from the People's Republic of China, India, and some other nations, including the U.S. administration. We simply presented our friends, colleagues, and partners with a picture of what the situation could develop into. Now, Putin was referring to security concerns around Victory Day, but his list of Russia's partners and friends, China, India, and the United States, tells you everything about why the empire had to convene a big anti-Trump war council in Mark Carney's Canada this past weekend, headlined by top Soros and Obama operatives. One of them, Patrick Gaspard, said this.
I think interregnum is the perfect word to use, Senator, because the death of a king is a shocking and traumatic moment right? The death of the old model here of the world is shocking and traumatic. What do we all need to be doing in our spaces that prepares us for this moment after the interregnum?
Now, that's a man who served as both Obama's political campaign director and as the head of Soros's Open Society Foundation, admitting that the world is dead, and he and Mark Carney are trying to rally the forces for a hoped-for world after Donald Trump. Now, a lot of the MAGA sphere was focused on that Toronto meeting.
Navan, the #1 rated business travel platform, lets your team book work travel in one place. Flights, hotels, cars.
There are posts greeted by Carney and pictures of Alex Soros attending the conference. The coverage is everywhere. But what they're missing is this. Carney, Obama, and Soros are not operating from a position of strength. They're scrambling to come up with a fallback plan, while Donald Trump and the other countries are showing the world that sovereign nations can defeat empires. I'm Susan Kokinda, and I've known for decades that the battle lines are not what you've been told. It's not right versus left or capitalist versus communists, but it's an extension of the fight we started 250 years ago. And that's why Promethean Action has been able to identify what President Trump is doing better than anyone else, and why you should hit those like, share, and subscribe buttons. So here's what I'm going to cover today. First, I'm going to take you behind the scenes in Toronto and look at what the Carney Doctrine is all about. Second, I'm going to look at the new global configuration that the Carney Doctrine is trying to stop. And third, how this plays out in the US and what it's going to mean for the midterms. So the leadership of, let's call it the North American franchise of the British Empire, gathered in Toronto for the Global Progress Action Summit. Barack Obama flew up on Friday. He gave a closed-door address to the kickoff gala banquet. But the next day, the entire Obama-Soros network, minus Obama himself, was in full attendance in strategy sessions under the banner of the Center for American Progress and Canada 2020. Now, this comes less than a week after Mark Carney addressed over 40 European and Anglosphere nations about the need to create a new rules-based order minus Donald Trump's United States. The keynote in Toronto was delivered by Neera Tanden. She's the head of the Center for American Progress, who served Clinton, Obama, and Biden. She was introduced as leading, quote, the opposition in the United States. And here's what she, as the head of the opposition, had to say.
And in this past year, Prime Minister Carney has shown the world that there is a path forward, that it's possible to stand up to authoritarianism, but also deliver on the potential of progressive policies, ideas, and values. And in this room, we represent 40 countries, yet we face many of the same challenges in a growing affordability crisis and the rise of right-wing populism and authoritarianism.
So what is this new path forward that they're rallying around? At the summit, Mark Carney's foreign minister called it the Carney Doctrine and described it as principled pragmatism. Translated into plain English, that means keeping all the structures of globalism in place. Free trade, the green agenda, NATO, unchecked immigration, and forever wars, but face the fact that broad layers of the population have had it with the woke and crazy policies of the hard radical left and the economic impact of those globalist policies. So instead, their strategy, blow smoke in their eyes and act like you care about their economic well-being. I think some of them read the writing on the wall after Keir Starmer's epic defeat in Britain last week. Now, the American face of this rebrand at the conference was Senator Elissa Slotkin from Michigan, who comes from that peculiar class of CIA-spawned Democrats, and former Biden Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Both are being groomed by the Obama-Soros networks as 2028 presidential prospects. So here's Slotkin echoing Carney in American terms.
I think the thing that I think is very important is we're never going to go back to the way the world was. If the old system is no longer working, but we're in this interregnum reorganization. What does it look like when we come through the tunnel? And I would offer that what to me is very fundamentally important is that while ideals that many of us, myself included, were trained on, we have to deliver for our public. Our foreign policies have to serve the economic well-being of our countries. And if people can't see the connection between our engagement abroad and what it does for them back home, if they don't understand that in their bones, we got a problem.
They are admitting they have a problem. Now, look at who isn't admitting that. Look at who was not at the summit. AOC, Hakeem Jeffries, Gavin Newsom, and their ilk. Those are the lemmings still running off the cliff of the old narrative. CAP is positioning itself as the real opposition to Donald Trump, and they're saying it out loud. Now, who's actually running this? They all come from the Obama, Biden, Soros networks. Look at Gaspar, the man you just heard called Trump's presidency an interregnum. He was Obama's national political director in 2008. Then he became the director of the White House Office of Political Affairs. And then Soros tapped him personally to run the Open Society Foundation. Now he's at CAP moderating these summits.
You don't know what an AI platform is? Here's 3 new AI-powered changes to the
And CAP, Center for American Progress, itself is the Democratic Party's operational headquarters between administrations. It was launched by John Podesta, who's the closest thing that the Democratic establishment has to a permanent staff director. He was Bill Clinton's chief of staff, Obama's counselor, Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign chairman, and Biden's climate spending czar. So CAP has also internationalized itself through these global progress action summits. A previous summit was keynoted by Tony Blair. In 2024, the summit was embedded inside the Democratic mansion. And in 2025, the whole Anglosphere came together for the summit, with Canada, Britain, and Australia sending their prime ministers. So this has been a multi-year running political coordination operation with direct pipelines to the Obama networks, Soros networks, and the British through Tony Blair and a variety of other prime ministers. And it just landed in Canada under the Carney Doctrine. Now, watch this group, because it is easy to stay focused on the crazies in the Democratic Party. But these are the people who are being groomed to try and run things at the highest levels of the empire. And this is what Promethean Action does. We look behind things and the clickbait, and we expose the higher level strategic and deeper historical forces at play. So sign up for our free newsletter, stay in touch. The link is in the description. Now, while Carney and his friends are trying to regroup, President Trump and his partners are driving forward with a new strategic map of the world. Let's go back to Putin's remarks about his friends and partners and what's going on between the 3 superpowers. On May 9th, President Putin announced a pending significant oil and gas deal with China. Then, on May 14th, President Trump is traveling to China, and it's now being reported that Putin may travel to China very shortly thereafter. Now, the neocons will look at this from the old geopolitical playbook. They're going to say Russia and China are ganging up against the United States. Well, that's not how Trump or Putin see it. Putin made that clear by describing his friends and partners. And here's how Donald Trump described his relationship to China in an interview yesterday.
My relationship is very good with President Xi. I don't know the other leaders, but President Xi is a good man, smart man, loves China. And I look forward to being there. We did this once before, and it was amazing. It's going to be I think it's going to be an amazing trip.
Now, also, I want you to take note of the context of Putin's remarks about his partners. They came in the context of Victory Day. Victory Day marks the 81st anniversary of the end of World War II. This is the last time the United States and Russia and China were allied with each other against fascism. And for Russia, this celebration is always massive and deeply emotional because 26 million Russians died in that war. But in this 21st century, American presidents have ignored Victory Day. until Donald Trump. Apparently, celebrating our shared alliance with Russia and China against fascism didn't fit into the post-war narrative established by Winston Churchill when he gave his Iron Curtain speech in 1946. But Donald Trump has broken with that post-war narrative, and he issued his first Victory Day proclamation in 2025, and then he did it again last week. And now he's heading to China to talk to Xi, work through trade differences, and deepen the relationship. It's no wonder that the Obama-Soros networks are scrambling for a reset of their own. Donald Trump is dismantling the geopolitical architecture of the post-war period that kept the United States in permanent conflict with Russia and China, and also kept the Mideast in perpetual turmoil. Now, let's go back to Toronto and look at it from the American domestic standpoint. Remember how Patrick Gaspar and others described the Trump presidency as an interregnum, a temporary gap before the old order returns? Their desperate wish is that they can dislodge or cripple him through a Democrat midterm victory. But as Barbara covered on Wednesday, those hopes took several really big body blows last week, with both the U.S. Supreme Court and the Virginia Supreme Court delivering decisions on redistricting that makes a midterm path significantly harder for Democrats. Here's a New York Times headline, which captures the state of mind. A private call reveals Democrats' desperation over tossing of map. So the Obama-Soros network now knows they've got to work even harder. And that means trying somehow to win back the working class. Listen to how CAP's Neera Tanden framed it in Toronto.
I hope in your countries, people see what's happening in the United States and again recognize that this championship, this idea that the far right champions the working class is actually a failure.
A failure. That's what they want you to believe. They need you to not see what Trump is actually doing for the working class. That his tariff policies, his anti-monopoly push, and his credit for industry framework are creating a genuine economic revolution. They need people to stay in the world of being losers and victims, rather than seeing the profound changes taking place in our economy right now and what that means for the future. This is exactly where Promethean Action comes in. It's our job to make clear the depth of that economic revolution and to cut through the noise. And we did just that with our new pamphlet, which you can get by going to the Promethean Action website and clicking on the top banner. We show you that this administration has challenged the imperial system by reviving the American system of economics, and we show you the impact it is already having in terms of manufacturing, energy independence, and genuine and durable growth. So go over to the Promethean Action website, check out that pamphlet. This has been your Monday Brief. Thanks for watching.
With AI,
you can create any character you want in seconds.
this used to require huge Hollywood budgets, complex software.
Now,
The White House shouldn't be able to direct the Attorney General to go around prosecuting whoever the president wants to prosecute. We can't overcome the politicization of the criminal justice system, the awesome power of the state. You can't have a situation in which whoever's in charge of the government start using that to go after their political enemies or reward their friends, right?
When I saw this clip, I had to ask, what is he smoking? This is the guy who led the 2016 coup against the duly elected president, Donald Trump. Obama weaponized his Justice Department as the shock troops of the operation. Not only that, he kept that operation running for almost a decade. Now he's confessing he knows the Republic can't survive what he did. So why is he smiling? By the end of the week, that smile got wiped off his face, and I'm going to show you why. I'm Barbara Boyd, and I've documented this coup since it began in 2016. As a British instigated coup. Today, the three blows that wiped that smile off Barack Obama's face. First, how his hand-picked puppet, Keir Starmer, just got buried in a Labour Party bloodbath. Second, the Virginia Supreme Court bombshell that blew up Obama's most aggressive gerrymander in the country and reset the entire 2026 midterm map. And third, how J.D. Vance in Iowa and an outsider candidate in L.A. just exposed the one thing Obama's manufactured Democrats can never fake. But before we dig in, hit the like button and share this video. It increases our reach on YouTube. Let's start across the pond where the British Labour Party, the brain for the Democrats here, got shellacked in local elections, losing some 1,800 local races, control of the parliament in Wales, and further loss of control over the parliament in Scotland. Eluned Morgan, Wales's leader who lost her seat, said it was time for Labour to get back to being the party of the working class. Like Democrats here, Labour has totally abandoned that mission. Now, Obama had tried to turn Starmer into an actual personality, even taking credit for Starmer for victory. Counseled him and told him to be authentic. That mentorship produced what British commentator Jonathan Cook called the UK's first totally synthetic, laboratory-grown prime minister. Starmer continued London's disastrous green energy crusade, open border immigration policies, including protection of rape gangs, and permanent war against Russia in Ukraine, while raising taxes and cutting welfare. He jailed anti-immigrant protesters for their speech. But most of all, he kept scheming against Trump and Trump's destruction of the rotten globalist order that give people like him and Obama political. Electorate, the Democratic Party, under the personal direction of Barack Obama, who has run the redistricting operation for years through his All on the Line group, decided to retaliate. California redrew its maps. Virginia attempted the most aggressive partisan gerrymander in the country, turning a 6-5 Democratic map into a 10-1 Democratic map, wiping out 4 Republican seats in a state Trump nearly lost by 5%. They thought this would win them the House and secure Barack Obama's political future. That's why he was so cocky in the interview we just played. To do it, they bypassed the bipartisan redistricting commission Virginia voters had approved by constitutional amendment in 2020. They rammed a new amendment through the legislature on an illegal fast track and put it on a special ballot in April, spending over $5 million in taxpayer money, with outside groups spending nearly $100 million more. The referendum language was deliberately misleading. It's called it a temporary measure, restoring fairness. when the rigged maps were supposed to guarantee the House in 2026, secure the presidency in 2028, and secure Democratic majorities through the 2030 midterms. Their map 8 or consolidated the districts Trump won, making the whole election Northern Virginia dependent where Trump lost. The Supreme Court of Virginia threw the whole thing out, laying out in painstaking detail how the Democrats violated the Virginia Constitution by using that illegal fast track. The vote, the court said, had been fatally poisoned. But Obama's redistricting fantasies didn't just blow up here. The Supreme Court's April 29th decision in Louisiana versus Kellyus outlawed race-based gerrymandering nationwide, setting off a redistricting scramble throughout the red state South and calling into question California's map, which was explicitly based on race. And the College decision laid out why Texas's redistricting was not a political whim of Donald Trump. The redistricting there eliminated racially gerrymandered districts. In an instant, the midterm map shifted from Democratic certainty to wins for Trump's Republicans. That's why Democrats are engaged this Saturday in what George Washington law professor Jonathan Turley aptly called a prolonged primal scream. Because of the Iran war, we've missed big parts of the actual dynamic shaping the midterms. We've got momentum on redistricting because the Virginia court had the stones to call theft what it was, pure theft. But what about communicating the policies that will actually destroy Obama's insurrection against the Republic, the president's policies? The answer isn't more polished messaging, it's real authenticity, not the fake kind. 2 examples this week show you what that looks like. First, watch Vice President J.D. Vance's red meat speech to Iowa Republicans out of bags. One post for the floor.
So what happened for 41 years? We all know the story. The factories closed down.
Donald Trump is
my hometown. This is the story of my hometown where I grew up in a community that was proud, where people built things, where new homes were being made. And by the time I graduated from high school, the manufacturers laying people off. Those big, beautiful factories were shutting their doors. And we never had a political movement that said enough is enough until Donald J. Trump and Zach Nunn came along.
God bless. Have a good morning.
There was all sorts of stuff about national prosecutions of the Democrats' entitlement fraud schemes, barring foreign ownership of farmland, and doing more for our nation's farmers. Listen to the whole speech, and you'll see that. But when Vance reached for the souls of his audience, he did it the way only authentic people can. He talked about the emotions he would encounter if his 6-year-old son later decided to follow him into the military, and what it means to give your life for this country. Here's the last part.
And it hit me that every time we lose somebody, every time somebody goes overseas, life, every time that a person gives the ultimate sacrifice to the United States of America, we often read about it as a line on a newspaper or online, but there's a father, and there's a mother, and there's a grandma, and aunts and uncles, and a whole crew of people who love them the same way that we all love every single member of our family. And you take that love, and you set that on one side, and you consider the balance that all of us owe. Because on the other side is we have to meet their sacrifice by carrying something forward that they can't carry forward. We have to make this country worthy of that sacrifice. You remember that movie, Saving Private Ryan? It's one of my favorite movies. And at the very end, right before one of the soldiers takes his last breath, he looks up and he says, "Earn this."
That's what is at stake in these midterms, just like it was at Gettysburg when Abe Lincoln struck a similar theme. You might have also seen this week the AI videos going viral on social media for the outsider candidate Spencer Pratt in the LA mayor's race. Pratt lost his home in the Pacific Palisades fire and has been waging a relentless campaign on the failure of California's Democratic leadership ever since. A filmmaker named Charles Curran produced an AI-generated ad supporting Pratt. Here's part of how it goes.
Please, I'm begging you. There's homeless drug addicts in front of the schools. My children aren't safe.
Look, if you were a transgender migrant, I could get you a free pussy.
Let's move the drug addicts closer. Bass already solved a crime. I endorse her.
The DSA agents you see in that flick dragging people into the aristocracy's feast are Democratic Socialists of America, the Jacobin Democrats who have taken over that party. The Prague campaign itself is producing similar short videos dramatizing the destruction of the once golden state in ways words alone cannot. Recent polling shows Pratt tied with Mayor Karen Bass in second place, and his videos are catching fire all over the country. That's the point. A guy who lost his house in a fire with a filmmaker friend and an AI tool is doing more damage to the LA Democratic machine than $100 million of consultants ever could, because what he's saying is true and people can feel it. That's the asymmetric power of authentic outsider messaging against a manufactured aristocracy. Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, this guy Pratt, authentic, patriotic Americans talking straight to the people in a way manufactured politicians like Obama, Starmer, and the Jacobin Democrats can never do. So here's where we are this Saturday. Across the pond, Obama's hand-picked synthetic prime minister just got buried by working-class British voters who's had enough of green energy fantasies, open borders, and permanent war. Here at home, the Virginia Supreme Court called Obama's gerrymandering operation what it is, theft. And the Louisiana ruling means race-based map rigging is finished as a national strategy. And on the campaign trail, J.D. Vance is talking to Iowans about what it means to give your life for this country, while a guy who lost his house in the Pacific Palisades fire is running circles around the LA Democratic machine with 30-second AI videos. Manufactured politicians lose to truth tellers. Fake social media cyborg gets buried by addressing the realities people face from the heart. That's the lesson of the entire Trump era. And it's why Obama smiles the way he does. He fears his project is done. And the only thing left for him to do is to pretend otherwise. The midterm map just shifted. The British operation is being rolled up. The people are waking up, but we're not there yet. If you want to be on the real battlefield, not the one legacy media or social media cyber shows you, but the actual fight between empire and sovereign nations that have shaped American politics for 250 years, then join us. The battle for the midterms has just been joined, although the doom scrollers and the media will try to convince you to stay out because the country's lost. That's the side war we fight here every single day. We need to expand to win. Become a supporting member or contributor. Losing is not. This is your Saturday Wrap. Thanks for listening.
Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at PrometheanAction.com.
Using debunk claims about quote-unquote unfair elections as a pretext to send what he's now calling a large, quote, election integrity army to every state for the 2026 midterms. Trump made that announcement in response to Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer's new effort to push back against potential election interference from Trump and Republicans. Now, Trump didn't give specifics on who actually would be, the so-called army, but his comments echo a strategy from Republican operatives to install trained recruits as poll workers to monitor the 2024 election.
First of all, based on what we have seen since January 20th of last year, he will leverage every single body carrying a badge and a gun to serve whatever purposes he thinks he can get away with. Whew. We have had the Attorney General, in spite of a direct federal law contravening his assertions, say that he has no problem with ICE at polling places. Again, Congress passed a law that was signed by a president which forbids armed federal agents from being at polling places. And we have a really shameful history from the Jim Crow and Reconstruction eras as to why that is necessary. Secondly, we know from his first failed coup attempt in 2020 that he is willing to rile up a crowd like we saw on January 6th who are willing to destroy federal property, assault police officers, and generally make a mockery of every single thing that this country is supposed to stand for. And it's important to note, he doesn't need to take over a polling place. He doesn't need to start another insurrection. All he needs to do is use legerdemain and lies to cast doubt on a few swing states and throw the country into chaos. And we have seen, to get back to what we were talking about earlier, time and time again, that it is unfortunately easy for him, whether by his skill or other people's gullibility, to hoodwink those who want to support him.
I mean, this was the scene inside the Louisiana State House last week as Republicans worked to jam through the new maps. Protesters packing the halls, demanding to be heard. It's frankly some of the same in Alabama, where Republicans are trying to take away at least one of the 2 congressional districts in Alabama represented by a black lawmaker. Protesters saying, "We shall overcome," outside the House chamber, some of them dragged away by security guards. Same thing in Tennessee, where Republicans have passed new maps that break up majority black Memphis, so Republicans can run the table for the whole state. Protesters blew whistles and booed and shouted shame as Republican lawmakers walked in to cast their votes. I should tell you, in Tennessee, a big slice of black residents in Memphis will now have their votes folded into a white county called Williamson County. Williamson County literally still has a Confederate flag on their county seal. But they'll have just the right size of a slice of black voters from Memphis to make sure they can never, with their other Memphis residents, elect a member of Congress of their choosing. There's a reason why people are calling this Jim Crow 2.0. This really is plainly an effort to drag us back to the post-Reconstruction era after the Civil War, right? The so-called redemption of the old Confederacy, where the slave states reverted to giving black Americans zero say in their own democracy. And the federal government let them do it.
The Supreme Court has gotten it wrong generation after generation. The rights we enjoy right now are not because of 9 people on the Supreme Court. It's because people fought for them. And where the Supreme Court usually gets it wrong is when they're taking away rights, whether it's Korematsu with the internment of Japanese, whether it's Plessy versus Ferguson denying rights to African Americans, whether it's Dobbs. They got it wrong taking away rights for women to control what happens to their bodies. And here we have again the Supreme Court taking away rights, equality, fair representation, and fair voting. Doing in result the exact same thing happened when Reconstruction fell in the 1870s. And exactly what happened then is state legislators moved to take away rights and access and fairness and representation from black people. The Supreme Court is effectively sending us back to an era where legislators in many of these states can effectively wipe black voter power off. This is not about left or right. So the question is not what the Supreme Court did, because they've done it in past generations. It's what are we going to do as a result? And they may have issued a decision. It's time for us to again make history. And we can. Every American should see this as no longer about left or right, about right or wrong. This race now we're having with all of these maps since the Rucho versus Common Cause decision, where the Supreme Court says, hey, yeah, partisan gerrymandering is anti-democratic, but we're not going to do anything about it. And now they're allowing this race. Well, this election has to be about those fundamental rights. Not right or wrong, but will Americans have basic fundamental rights like the right to vote and the right to fair representation? Because this race to the bottom we're on is wrong, and the desecration of the sacrifices and struggles of so many people from different races, Goodman, Cheney, Schwerner, dying in Mississippi for voting rights. This has got to be about more than just a political election. It's got to be about us affirming our rights as past generations did when the Supreme Court tried to set us back.
Right now, the South is Exhibit A for how far we still need to go as a country. It is not surprising or shocking that the South is the one racing forward at lightning speed to strip Black people of their voice, and they're doing so without hesitation or shame. The Voting Rights Act was always what nudged us in the right direction, and that nudge was needed most greatly in the South, in the Deep South states, the former Confederacy that is not even blinking as they shamelessly strip away districts represented by honorable Black public servants. So, as we have done throughout our nation's history, the NAACP will continue to march forward in the wake of the animus and the hostility. We will turn out in the streets and use our voices. We will turn out in the courts, Constitution in hand, standing up for the rights outlined in the Reconstruction Amendments. But most importantly, this election season, you will see turnout like you have never seen before. It is at the ballot box where we will use our voice in the most determined fashion during this dark season.
Michael, as we know, DOJ trying to get everybody's voter rolls. You have references to this army that they want to put out there. And then on top of that, Michael, you now have the Washington Post drawing our attention to the fact that you have a bunch of Republicans who denied the 2020 election results who could be governors next year. Political figures who took leading roles in trying to overturn the 2020 presidential election appear on track to win the Republican Party's nomination for governor in several of the country's biggest battleground states, including Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. What could possibly go wrong? I remember Arizona and Nevada in 2022, Michael, when there were big Senate races, and one of the big dividing lines between the Democratic and Republican candidate.
So I'm really excited to share this conversation with everyone on the world, on the internet, and to get some time with Koch, Chase Koch. Chase and I have known each other since 2013.
Yep.
When we overlapped in the agriculture industry, got to know each other. We've been business partners, and Charles and I have gotten to know each other a few times over the years, but I'm really excited for this conversation tonight. So Charles, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having it.
It's an honor. Every few years, a new ad channel opens before the market catches on. That's Axon.ai right now. The AI ad platform behind one of the biggest runs in tech with access to over 1 billion daily users. Full-screen video ads in mobile games watched for a median of 35 seconds. Businesses are profitably spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a day on it, and most advertisers don't even know it exists yet. The window is open. Silicon Valley entrepreneurs and even mature company CEOs always like to learn about the story of other businesses and the success of those businesses. And I've always felt like Koch Industries was told story. Probably the most profitable private family-owned business in the world. Maybe I'm off on a couple of points, but certainly up there. And one of the most impressive business stories because of the evolution of the business, which I'm hopeful we can hear a little bit about how that evolution came to be tonight. And just for some statistics, if Koch were publicly traded, the revenue would put it easily in the top 25 of the Fortune 500. It's a family-owned business based out of Wichita, founded in 1940 by Fred Koch, with businesses ranging from energy, agriculture, chemicals, building products, consumer products, even cloud computing, and a very active minority investment portfolio with 120,000 plus employees. That statistic might be off, across 60 countries. Very unique operating model, which we'll get into today, including principles around disruptive innovation of the business, reinvesting 90% of profits in new businesses and growth, meritocratic values. And I'm hopeful that tonight we can take an opportunity to hear about the evolution of the business and talk about some of those principles. And maybe we can get started, Charles, if you could give us a sense of the scale of the business. What are the business lines that you operate today? And maybe, provide a little more color to those high-level statistics I shared today.
I can go back through some of the history and the failures and successes, but I'll go through what we've grown since the early 1960s. And then we had 300 employees. Now we have more than 130,000, and in 60 countries, and we have increased in value 9,000 times over that period.
When did you join the business?
In 1961, full time. I'd been working. Well, my father, we lived on a farm, and he told me at age 6 he didn't want me to be a country club bum, so he made me work in all my spare time, which I hated, and so I was always in trouble, and so he was kind of tough on me, rightfully so. And thank God he did. Years later, I asked him, Pop, why were you so much tougher on me than you were on my younger brothers? And he said, son, you plumb wore me out.
When you came into the business, what was the scope of the business? What was the business operating?
We had two main businesses. One was to design and make fractionating trays. That is, that they separate liquids by differences in boiling points. And then our largest business was a crude oil gathering system in Oklahoma. And so my father, and I had finished just a few years earlier, finished MIT, and I was working for Arthur D. Little, then a leading consulting firm, and I was, and you'll think this is a joke, at age 25, I was doing management consulting. I mean, I have to laugh at the absurdity of that, but they were paying me for it, believe it or not. So my father called me and he said, son, I want you to come back and join the business. And as tough as he had been on me, and as I say, rightly so, I declined. So he called me a few weeks later and he said, son, either you come back to run the company or I'm going to have to sell it because my health is bad and the companies aren't doing well and I don't have long to live. So I agreed because for a number of reasons. The first one is I got 3 degrees at MIT in engineering and I sucked as an engineer. I mean, get that. And so how'd you get through MIT? Because I was real good at the math and the science and the theory. And I was no good at making or operating things. So I figured out pretty quickly that I wasn't going to make it as an engineer, so I need to be an entrepreneur. And because I was good at principles, and that's why so I was always looking for principles that would help me contribute and succeed. And that's what transformed our company.
So you come into the business, a couple hundred employees, you said?
300 employees.
300 employees. And how did you think, was the mandate to grow the business? Was it just to keep it stable?
No, it was, could I take a few minutes and go through those first two businesses?
Your show,
the first three?
Yeah,
okay.
That sounds great, yeah.
Okay, the first one was making fractionating trays, designing those. We had a president then who was one of our principles, you don't want to be. The negative is top down and obsessed with controlling everybody. So he would send out memos every week demanding on what they spent, how did you spend it on, what did you do, how did you do this right? So they were frustrated. Matter of fact, they started ignoring him. And then the whole culture was protectionist. That is, when they sold the internals for a fractionating tower, they wouldn't tell them the design. And well, we need to know the design so we can correct it. No, they wouldn't give it to them. And then what's even worse, to satisfy the European market, they didn't even build a plant there. They They had multiple subcontractors do parts of a tray and then bring them all together and assemble with another contractor. Now you can imagine how that was for speed and cost. So we were losing our ass, if you excuse the expression. And so I changed the management and changed the philosophy. Okay, the first thing we're going to focus on is creating value for our customers. And then the second thing, we're going to empower our employees so they want to do this. And the third thing, we're going to do a plant. We're going to build a plant in Italy to satisfy the European market. We're going to do it all ourselves. And so we became profitable. And then we started adding related products. And I'll get to that later, but and so we started growing.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You come in at 25 plus or minus a little bit, and you see the problems at the business. It's not profitable. It's not being well managed, and you overturn the management team. How did you have the confidence at this age, coming with the experience you had, to take that level of action that quickly?
Well, it was life or death. And my father said, you can run this business any way you want. The only thing you need my approval on is to sell. That's the way he talked me into coming back after I said I didn't want to, or I wasn't going to. And then in 1970, what really helped is my younger brother David joined the business, and then he continued that growth.
And then you're now running a profitable operation. You've got a European business, and at that point, did you start to think about expanding into other products and other?
Well, that's it. And this is so. I was learning all these different principles, and what I saw we were doing, not just here, but in other things, is we were building capabilities. That is, I looked at it. We need to be capability bounded, not industry bounded. Like, okay, you could say to a certain extent, because we were in Crew together, we're in the oil industry. Oh, that means everybody would say you need to be an integrated oil company. You need to be in everything. And I was applying divisional labor by comparative advantage. No, you need to be in the part of it, of the industry, in the part of the value chain where you can create more value than others. Otherwise, you're going to fail. And that's what we're seeing happening now. There's more specialization by comparative advantage. And so that's what, so I started this, created this principle called creating virtuous cycles of mutual benefit. And what that led us to do is to start this never-ending cycle of growth, innovation, success, and failures that when we did it right, that we learned from and made us better and taught us better how to apply principles to create value. And we're still going through that. We have a lot of failures. And that's when you apply creative destruction in your new things. If you're not failing at everything, you're not doing anything new.
Where did you learn that lesson? So what was the first major failure that, they always say you got to plan until you get punched in the face. What was the first punch in the face?
Well, I had a bunch of them with that company. It was called Koch Engineering then. And like I said, okay, when we got into refining, we created petroleum coke. So I said, well, let's come up with a way to use that as base to make activated carbon. And that was we spent a fair amount of money on that. And we had a whole bunch of those. And we've had many more.
How did you make the decision to shut it down or walk away? At some point, a lot of entrepreneurs have this problem. They build something, they're too in love with it, and they don't know when to say enough is enough.
Yeah, well, that's when enough is enough, when we lose our ass enough. No, it's when we decide we don't have the capability to create superior value for our customers and that we're going to be rewarded for. And sometimes it can be the structure of a business. Like the company that Case founded, Koch Disruptive Technology, Insight Tech, it does tremendous things, but it is a structure that makes it hard to make it profitable. And so that's the other thing is, so that's another, these are principles that we've learned. Okay, we didn't apply that. What were the principles that we didn't apply that caused us to fail? That's what I mean we learned from failure. So the businesses you asked the businesses we're in now, and Chase, and there's Koch people here, you all can catch me up if the ones I miss, but we have engineered projects, engineering construction. We have, we build solar plants. We have commodity trading and distribution. We have fertilizers. We have refined products. We have chemicals and polymers. We have glass. We have forest and consumer products. We have 4 different investment firms with different comparative advantages, and we have electrical products, and we have software systems for management.
Dave, let me just hit one point. No, you got it. You did a great job. I mean, basically, like 8 wholly owned business unit platforms that he described, and then 4 investment different businesses. But I just wanted to kind of really drill a point home, because when I came out, when I started really hanging out with you and the whole tech community and trying to like build that network, a lot of people had the same question that you did about who is Koch, what are you guys all about? You know, I know it's a large private business, but being in Wichita, Kansas, we don't know that much about it. I think this point that is so different about Koch versus almost any other company out there is what my father said on being capability bounded, not industry bounded. And you know, how do you get from a small crude oil gathering company in southern Oklahoma to all of those businesses that he described? And there's, I mean, the principles obviously throughout, which we'll be talking about in this discussion, but one of the absolute core differences is that whole approach to capabilities. And I would encourage anyone that's in a business and trying to scale, think about it from that lens. What capabilities have I demonstrated that I can add value to customers? And then point it at new industries where I can experiment. This is one of our principles as well, experimental discovery. Not trying to do everything at once and trying to conquer the world, but experiment and test, does the customer value my product or not? And then along the way, you know, the core capabilities for off as operations, logistics, trading. In the very early days of Koch, that's what we demonstrated we were good at. We were getting great customer feedback. But then when we had the capability approach to say, okay, we started in energy, we started in crude oil gathering pipelines and refineries, can we point those same capabilities into natural gas? Can we point those into chemicals? Let's experiment there. Can we point those into fertilizers? Because then we learn natural gas. And then the Georgia Pacific opportunity comes along. And it's like, hey, these are wood products. It doesn't seem similar to these other businesses, but it's the same core capabilities. We buy Georgia Pacific, and along the way, it was somewhat of a happy accident that we started learning about consumer products and branding. So branding became a new capability for Koch through acquisition, but it started with where do we think we can add value and do a good job on that and collect new capabilities along the way. So I think that's like a really simple way to think about Koch, and it's over the course of time, like how we're different. And one other thing I'll mention too, because I've been asked many times, it's like, well, so is it sort of like, you know, a Berkshire Hathaway where you have all these different businesses, a conglomerate? And I would say no. I mean, obviously Warren Buffett and his team have done an unbelievable job operating the business the way they have. But we think about our business very differently. Instead of operating them all as independent businesses and almost like in silos, think about it as a republic of science. We're not a conglomerate. We're an integrated set of capabilities.
Is it fair to say that you wouldn't consider an acquisition or a new business line if there wasn't some relatedness to an existing competency at the company?
It depends. I mean, as you see when you read the book, we went through one chapter on creative destruction. And